Everybody, anybody from yesterday's stream? Checking in, doing a little bit of a late night stream here. Where y'all from? Anybody from the East Coast? It'll be late for you guys. 7:30 for me. I'm on the West Coast, in case you couldn't tell by the Angels hat. How's everybody doing? Are we doing overrated, underrated, or properly rated today? Couldn't fit all that, obviously, into the video title, but yeah, give me a player. I'll tell you if I think they're overrated, underrated, or properly rated. It can be a guy from now. It can be a guy from any era of baseball. Unless I don't know them, but honestly, that seems fairly unlikely unless there's somebody who's really unknown. Welcome everybody in here. Feel free if you want to give the stream a like, and then any donations as well will be appreciated. And it's also guaranteed that I'll read any of your messages as well, because it pops up. It's just easier to see. The chat can get going pretty fast sometimes when we really get into it. Hey David, how's it going? What's up, everybody? Great to have you all in here. Anybody from previous streams as well, feel free to shout that out. I love people who can make it in multiple times. Amazing. We're trying to build a little live streaming community here. All right, we'll pick out our first person. Who we got? Jazz Chisholm. So there's an argument to be made that he could be just because he actually made a cover of MLB The Show, and he probably didn't necessarily deserve to at that point in his career. But oh, what's up, bruh? What's up, bro? Appreciate you. But I don't know. His production's been fairly consistent throughout his career, aside from the injuries and stuff. Honestly, at this point, I'd say he's probably properly rated. People see him as a contributing piece, especially on the Yankees, right? He's not going to necessarily save their season, but he's seen as a solid contributing piece. So I would say that he's I would say that he's considered to be properly rated at this point. Sleepy Flip Flops, appreciate it, man. Yeety Boy, what's up, man? Great to have anybody in here who's been in multiple times. Feel free to like the live for everybody that's just popping in. Zot, you said Jonah Heim, love the vids. I'd say Jonah Heim is about properly rated. Dude's seen as a really up-and-coming catcher. Last year was really good for him. This year I think is a little bit worse for him. But he's still, he's very solid defensively. He's very solid offensively. I would say that he's seen about properly rated. Josh Donaldson. I have to say overrated for Donaldson because for a large portion of his career, he was seen as a middle-of-the-order, big bopper type of bat. But when it comes down to it, the dude was never all that productive from an overall perspective. Even during his MVP season, Mike Trout was at least 2 wins better. There was a couple other guys too that were in the running that maybe had a case aside from him, and he still ended up winning MVP. So I'd say he's slightly overrated throughout the course of his career. We got next here, Ken Griffey Sr. I'd say Ken Griffey Sr. is underrated, dude. Ken Griffey Sr. had a hell of a career overall, and we never talk about it because obviously his kid was way better. But when it comes, he had, if I'm not mistaken, over 2,000 hits, maybe over 2,500 career hits, which is insane for any baseball player of any era. Welcome everybody in here, man. We're already at 9 likes, less than 5 minutes in. Thank you guys so much, everybody who's supporting the streams. I've been loving doing these, man, connecting with everybody. So we're already at 10 now. Thank you so much. Trying to get to 20 likes as well. Anybody who wants to throw a donation in there, it's really appreciated. Helps support the streams. And it's also a guarantee if you want to throw a little message in there, I'll see it because this chat can get going pretty fast sometimes. Also shout you out by name because if you support the stream, I want to support you too. So thank you so much, everybody. Who we got next here? Stephen Kwan. Take the paper to my shirt or something. Why, you don't like seeing it bounce back and forth? It's kind of tough, man, just because then it kind of goes back here and behind the chat. But okay, Stephen Kwan. I would say Stephen Kwan is, I'd say underrated still, right? I know there's a lot of people in the baseball community who've been singing his praises all year. I know he's been trying to hit the ball a lot harder. The president hates me. He said that it makes you tired. Well, I'm sorry about that, man. We'll see as the streams go on what we're going to do about that. But regardless, Stephen Kwan, I would say, he still is talked about by a lot of baseball types, especially because he made a conscious change to start trying to hit the ball harder. And he's very productive in the outfield. But when it comes down to it, he's still not seen with maybe the stature among the general baseball population that he's going to be going forward. I think if he can continue performing like he has been, and if the Guardians can continue performing like they have been. So I think he's slightly underrated right now, and he's going to start skewing more towards the properly rated category as time goes on. We got Christian Yelich. Oh, thank you so much, Max Plays. I saw that. Christian Yelich. I would say Christian Yelich is underrated right now. He had his period, right, where I would say he's about properly rated. MVP levels. People were looking at him that way. They were looking at him as a potential, maybe even a future Hall of Famer type. And he had a couple seasons that were down, probably went into the overrated category. But now he's made the complete, he's rounded that hill because look at where he's been performing this season. He's been performing to a 150 OPS plus aside from the injuries and stuff like that. But I mean, that's almost level to the level that he was before during his MVP run. So I would say that he's underrated at this point. Who we got next here? Yordan Alvarez. I would say Yordan Alvarez is about properly rated. I mean, people see him as like one of the faces of baseball, one of the big sluggers, and I think he's seen as that. You know, he's seen as a productive overall slugger. The one problem is, of course, that he doesn't have nearly the capabilities that some of the other guys do that are up at the upper echelon, just because he can't really field, he can't really run, but he deserves to be one of the faces of baseball, and I'd say that he is. What do we got next here? Do I think the Guardians going to make the World Series? I mean, it's tough to predict any team, especially in today's modern era with teams getting to sneak in there. Look, last year was a couple wild card teams that made it to the World Series. But I think the Guardians got a really solid chance because they got solid pitching. They always do. They know how to run a team in the playoffs, and they got some solid performers as well who I don't think are going to fade under the bright lights. So I think they got a reasonable chance. All right, everybody who's in here, thank you so much, man. We're getting up there. We're getting streams just getting going. Everybody who's in here, thank you so much for the support. Trying to get to 20 likes. I don't think we've ever gotten to near 20 likes so fast, so thank you so much, everybody who's popping in. If you guys do want to consider donating, it's the best way to support the stream. It really helps out. It's also guaranteed that I'll see the player that you're throwing in there, just because the chat can go moving pretty fast sometimes. And then on top of that, I'll also shout you out by name because you support me. I want to support you too. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm really enjoying the little community we're building here. Pete Rose. I would say Pete Rose is slightly overrated. If you look at his overall production, it's good, but like any guy who had a really high batting average around that time period, it's inevitable he's going to be a little overrated because batting average used to be perceived as like one of the top batting stats, right? That was more important than slugging, it was more important than OBP, all that stuff around that era. So because of that, inevitably he ended up getting seen as like one of the best players in Major League Baseball year in and year out, when he probably was more like top 5, top 10, sometimes even top 20. But that batting average is a lot of the lifting. So I'm not no shade to Pete Rose's legacy from the perspective of him as a player, but when it comes down to it, I would say he's probably a little overrated. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he's underrated now, man. He's just like Yelich, in my opinion, where it's like he was so good, then he got to a place where he fell off a little bit, so he probably was a little overrated. Even as recently as last year, I'd say he was probably a little overrated. Still seen as one of the faces of baseball, even though he's thrown up a 2 WAR in a full season. But this year, have you seen his numbers recently? I just checked his baseball reference page the other day, and the dude is literally right now having a near identical OPS plus to what he had during that season. His batting average, I think, is better than it was during that year. His power is a little bit less, but I mean, that's okay. We're willing to toggle some of those stats back and forth and still give him that respect. So, dude is one of the preeminent sluggers of this season so far. So much respect to him, especially on a Blue Jays team that's been terrible so far. Derek Jeter. I would say Derek Jeter, I mean, you have to say he's overrated because he was seen as like one of the best players in Major League Baseball history. And when it comes down to it, he's probably not even top 20, top 30. But I mean, his offense is one of the best ever by a shortstop. He's like top 5 in hits all time, I believe. Stole a decent amount of bases, hit a decent amount of homers, was one of the best playoff performers of all time. So I would say that if those two things balance out a little bit, where it's like his defense, incredibly overrated. His offense, I'd say maybe a little underrated at this point. So I'd say he slants slightly overrated to we're getting into properly rated as people keep dogging on him for his defense. So Mike Schmidt, I'd say Mike Schmidt is I have to say properly rated. I mean, he's seen as the best third baseman of all time. When you ask anybody, name me the top 3 third basemen, he's always in that top 3. So I'd say he has to be considered top. Yeah, he's properly rated. Keep saying Dylan Dingler. I'm not aware of if that's a Major League Baseball player, but if it is a Major League Baseball player and I'm not aware of it, that's a hell of a name. Over 200 people in here. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm showing a lot of support on this topic specifically. That's amazing, man. Keep throwing players in there. Feel free to like the live as well. Trying to get to 30 likes. And anybody who wants to consider donating, it's the best way to support the stream. I'll read off your message, whatever you put into the donation message, and also shout you out by name because if you support me, I want to support you too. Let's get back to it. Who we got? My favorite MLB team of all time? I don't know. That's honestly tough. I like them all for different reasons. If I had to pick one, I used to be a big fan of the Tigers when I was younger, so I guess that's my best. Yeah, that's my best answer for that. Dude, I'll look into Dylan Dingler after this stream is over, buddy. I mean, he's probably recent, right? Almost definitely recent. Paul Skeens. Everybody wants to talk about Paul Skeens. You know what? Let's talk about Paul Skeens. I'd say Paul Skeens is properly rated. He's literally seen as like the best pitcher in baseball right now, and no one can debate. He is. Look at his numbers. This year, amongst pitchers who've thrown over 100 innings, which I believe he just passed not that long ago, he's the best pitcher in Major League Baseball. He's going to deserve the NL Cy Young if he can stay healthy, if he can keep racking up innings. If he gets over 170, I'd say, innings, which I don't know if he can get, but we'll see if he can, then I think he's probably going to win the Cy Young and he'll deserve it. That has been insane what he's done this season so far. Jackson Holliday, I'd say Jackson Holliday at this point slanting a little underrated. I mean, look what he's done over the last 2 weeks, and everybody had wrote him off like in the kind of like more general baseball community. Just because he struggled so much coming up. So I would say he's slightly underrated. Still a lot of talent evaluators are calling him the top prospect in Major League Baseball, so I can't say he's too underrated, but yeah, I would say that's about where I land on that. We got next here, Royce Lewis. Royce Lewis, I'd say, is still underrated. Just, I mean, his production's been insane when he's on the field, but if he can stay on the field consistently over the next, let's say, year to 2 years, I think he's going to be getting properly rated because holy moly, he's one of the best pure hitters in Major League Baseball. However, he does have to stay healthy. Otherwise, it might get a little difficult for him to like raise his stature in Minnesota of all places, right? Thank you so much. Everybody who's in here, we're already at 35 likes. We're not even 11 minutes in. Thank you so much. Trying to get to 40 likes. So if you are in here and you haven't liked so far, feel free to like. Anybody who wants to throw a donation in there as well, it's really appreciated. Helps support the stream. I'll shout you out by name. I'll also read your message, of course, because if you support me, I'll support you back. Thank you so much for considering. Let's hop to it. We got next here, Nolan Ryan. I'd say Nolan Ryan has to be considered a little overrated, right? His rate numbers aren't that good. His cumulative numbers are amazing because he pitched so many innings, but he walked the most batters of all time, most wild pitches. Basically, he was like really good, really amazing, but he wasn't top 10, top 5. A lot of people talk about him like he's the best pitcher ever. He was not. There's just no metric that you can judge that by. So, yeah, I think that's my take on that. Richie Sexson. Richie Sexson, incredibly underrated, man. Great callback there. I love the kind of like underrated players that you'll throw in there where it's like, oh my God, yeah, Richie Sexson was amazing, wasn't he? Yeah, dude, he was an underrated power hitter. I think he had over 40 homers a couple times, or at least got close a couple times. So Richie Sexson, amazing power hitter. Alec Bohm, I'd say Alec Bohm is probably about properly rated because earlier this season he was underrated based on how he was performing. He's really fallen off over the last 2 months, so I'd say it's swung back the other way. I'd say he's about properly rated. Carlos Delgado, incredibly underrated. Holy moly. Dude is like a borderline Hall of Famer, and nobody talks about him. I think he averaged like 38 homers per 162 games. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? That's insane. So, yeah, he did it at the wrong time with the steroids and everything, but dude was amazing. Jeff Kent. I'd say Jeff Kent's definitely slightly underrated. I don't know if he should be in the Hall of Fame, personally. I looked at his stats the other day, and they were pretty good, but he played a lot of games at third base, and that raises the standard a little bit for what you need for things like WAR, counting stats, stuff like that. He did play a decent amount of time at second base. I wouldn't be mad if he was in the Hall, but I kind of understand why he's not. Almost 250 people in here. Thank you guys so much. So great to keep building this little live community. Please like the video if you haven't already. Trying to get to 50 likes. Like yesterday we got to like 100, a little over 100. Trying to get to maybe like 200 today, let's say. I'm going to be streaming for a while, so anybody who wants to throw a super chat in there as well, I really appreciate it. I'll make sure to read your message off and then shout you out by name because if you support me, I support you. Thank you guys so much. We got next here. Man, you guys are getting this chat going fast, man. I love all the participation. Thank you guys so much. Aaron Judge. I'd say Aaron Judge is slightly underrated. Slightly underrated. I mean, again, anybody who plays in a market that big, it's going to be hard to make that case. But the thing is, you hear a lot of people talking about how he's great, but nobody's like, or not a lot of people are making the case that he's the best hitter since integration, which if you look at the numbers, he arguably may be sans steroids, right? I mean, obviously Bonds is better if we're going to consider steroid guys as legit, but if you don't consider steroids, it's him and Trout. Like, that's it. Via all the production matrices. It doesn't matter if you want to look at average homers, if you want to look at stats as advanced, OPS plus, WRC plus, he's on top of all of it, him and Trout. So he's got to be a little underrated. Not incredibly, though. I mean, he still does get his credit, but I'd say a little bit. Dansby Swanson. Dude, Dansby Swanson this year is a little overrated. He used to be the king of underrated among shortstops, in my opinion. One of the most underrated shortstops in baseball. But unfortunately, when it comes down to it this season, he's been really underperforming. And he has that huge contract now and a big stature in Chicago, which is a big baseball city. So the fact that he's not performing, got to be considered a little underrated or a little overrated, right? We got next here, Bobby Witt Jr. Bobby Witt Jr. I'm surprised I didn't get a Bobby Witt Jr. earlier, or at least I haven't seen it. I'd say Bobby Witt Jr. at this point in his career has to be considered to be about properly rated. I mean, he's seen as people keep talking about like he's going to win the MVP if Trout or if Judge falls off in the slightest, and it's true. That's how he's been performing. He does play in a smaller market though, so if anything, I'd say he slants towards underrated, but I would say he's about properly rated. People are talking about him like crazy in the baseball space, and he deserves every single bit of it. We got next here, Kevin Youkilis. I saw that a number of times. Thank you so much for sticking with it. Dude, Kevin Youkilis, underrated. Crazy underrated. I mean, his defense at third base was Gold Glove caliber. His defense at first base was Gold Glove caliber. And the dude was a solid hitter for like 10 years in the big leagues. Completely underrated. Those are the guys that fade to time that don't deserve to, man. What a player he used to be. Loved his batting stance, too. Craziest batting stance. One of them in Major League Baseball history. Thank you guys so much. At 54 likes so far on the live. If you haven't liked the live so far, feel free to. Trying to get to 60 likes. Any super chats or anything are appreciated as well. If you do throw a player in there, I'll answer it immediately and shout you out by name. Who we got next here? Jorge Posada. Underrated. Dude should be a Hall of Famer. Are you kidding me? Based on how things have gone for Hall of Fame voting for catchers, dude, catchers get shafted. He's one of the chief examples. Dude belongs in the Hall of Fame. I could list off his resume here for a solid like 15 minutes, but let's just say, suffice to say, he belongs in the Hall. Corey Seager, I'd say Corey Seager's, I'd say he's about properly rated. I mean, you could argue he's underrated because maybe he's a little better than he's seen nationally, but he's gotten injured so many times over the last, like, let's say 5 seasons that it's hard for him to stay healthy. So until he can stay healthy, I can't say that he's decidedly underrated, but once he does, he'll move into that category just because he doesn't get a lot of shine nationally. Who we got next here? Adrian Gonzalez. Dude, Adrian Gonzalez, another guy like Kevin Youkilis. Dude deserves more credit for all the things he did. He's in the first ballot Hall of Very Good, you know? I mean, like, not quite up to the Hall of Fame level, but if you can rack up 40 career WAR in the big leagues. I love you, dude. I love you too, man. Thank you so much. 40 career WAR in the big leagues and over like 300 and some career homers. You deserve credit for that. Dude was amazing. One of the first overall picks that really worked out, if you've seen that video that I made. I gave him an A. We got next here, Chris Bryant. I would say Chris Bryant is he's overrated. Any of those guys who have huge contracts that are massively underperforming them, how could we say that they're properly rated or even underrated, right? He's got to be overrated. Rendon, same thing, right? Same class of player. JT Realmuto. I'd say JT Realmuto is about properly rated. For a lot of years, he was underrated. You know, I think that's a lot of people were talking about him as if he was underrated for a lot of years now. And he was, right? Because he was one of the best catchers in baseball because he was playing with the Marlins that wasn't really coming through all that much. Went to the Phillies, was still one of the best catchers, started getting his shine. And then recently, he's fallen off a little bit in terms of production. I still love how many games he plays. I think his rate stats are really good for a catcher still. His defense is a little less than it used to be. So I'd say he's fallen into about properly rated. Albert Pujols, you know, I'd say he's underrated at this point. It's kind of crazy to say because, I mean, he gets a ton of shine and he deserves a ton of shine, don't get me wrong. But he had one of the best 10-year peaks of all time. If we're not counting steroids, guys, right? He probably didn't have the best 10-year peak of all time relative to their era. And you talk about all the milestones he hit and everything, but you don't talk about how crazy it is to throw up the slash line he did over a full decade. He slugged over 600 for a full decade, apparently sans steroids. Crazy. Definitely a little underrated in my book. We're at 66 likes. Thank you guys so much. I'm seeing the chat oscillate between like 250, got up as high as like 270. Thank you guys so much. Everybody who's in here supporting the live. I really appreciate everybody. I'm trying to get to 70 likes. Anybody who wants to consider sending a donation, it's really appreciated. You can attach a message to that. I'll immediately read that off and shout out your name as well. Thank you so much. Let's get back to it. What we got? Tucker Barnhart. You know, Tucker Barnhart might be a random name, but I'd say he was about properly rated. He was seen as like a backup catcher / starter at times, and he performed up to that level. So I'd say he's about properly rated. Gary Carter, underrated. Dude, when's the last time you saw Gary Carter brought up in a casual baseball conversation? And dude's a top 3, maybe top 5. I think he's top 3 catcher of all time. It's probably him, Pudge, and Piazza. Well, bench too. So he's probably top 5. Top 5. That's crazy though, right? People don't talk about him enough. Gary Carter, incredibly underrated. Smith, yeah, I'd say Will Smith is underrated. Big time, Will Smith is underrated. Dude slugs, or he has an OPS over 800 every single season as a catcher and performs admirably on defense as well. He doesn't hit when playoffs come. Some playoffs he's hit, but most he hasn't. But when it comes down to it, I mean, 800 OPS from a catcher with adequate defense is so valuable in 2024. Alex Bregman. Honestly, he started off the year tough. He's been a little hotter as of recently. I'd say maybe slightly overrated for his career. The juice ball era did a lot for his stature, and he's never really lived up to that again because he wasn't really that kind of hitter ever. So I think the fly ball approach has hurt him in recent years because he doesn't hit the ball as hard as like a lot of guys do who are in that mold. So I'd say he's slightly overrated. Gunnar Henderson. I'd say Gunnar Henderson is about properly rated. I mean, he's seen as like an MVP level player for like a large portion of the season until he's fallen off a little bit. He's probably not going to be a Hall of Fame, or I'm sorry, a MVP contender at this point. Like at least not a top two. But I mean, still, he's seen as a future superstar in baseball, one of the faces of baseball. He deserves to be for one of the best young teams in baseball. So I'd say he's about properly rated. Anthony Rizzo. I'd say Anthony Rizzo is slightly overrated at this point. He's on a fairly decently large contract, if I'm not mistaken. And for a guy who's a first baseman, you cannot slug under 400. And I think he was slugging under 400 this year. Last season was tough too. I know the concussion did a lot to him, but at the end of the day, I mean, we have to judge him on the basis of his performance, and it's not been good so far this season. Thank you guys so much. We're at 68 likes, trying to get to 70 likes. Anybody who hasn't liked, feel free to. Thank you so much, everybody, for your support on these lives. It's been amazing. If you do want to consider donating, I'll read your message off. I'll shout you out by name immediately because if you support me, I want to support you too. $15 donation from James Gian. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Wait a second here. Maybe did I mispronounce that? No, we got a $15 donation. Thank you so much, man. We got let me read the message here. Kang Jung Ho. I think you mean Jung Ho Kang, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you so much for the donation. I would say Jung Ho Kang was like I'd say slightly underrated. I mean, dude was like a pretty solid baseball player for a couple of years in there. People talk about him because he was coming over from the KBO, but he never hit that level of production I think some guys thought that he was capable of, and I think that really hurt him at the end of the day in terms of his national stature. But he still deserved to be remembered more than he was. Labyrinth, thank you so much, man, for the $2. We got 7-time All-Star and 40-40 member Alfonso Soriano. Great callback, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate the support, and I also appreciate the player. Alfonso Soriano 100% is underrated throughout the course of his career. I mean, yeah, he's not going to be a Hall of Famer. Doesn't have quite those level of numbers. But nobody's talking about him nowadays, and he was one of the best players of his generation, one of the most consistently productive players of his generation. And he had some great seasons for the Yankees around the turn of the century as well. So, underrated player. That was a really good callback. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much for the support, man. Anybody who has the ability to donate, don't feel free if you don't have the ability to just, you don't, no pressure, obviously, but it really does help support the stream. Again, I'll shout you out by name. I'll read your message immediately. It doesn't have to be just about the prompt either. You know, whatever you want in baseball, I'll respond immediately. Thank you so much. Let's hop back to it. What do we got next here? Ozzy Albies. I'd say Ozzy Albies is about properly rated. I mean, he's seen as one of the superstar level second basemen in baseball, and he's been performing like that over the last few seasons. It's been uneven at times, but at the end of the day, he's been consistently at the end of the year productive. I'd like to see him hit from the right side permanently. I think he could be a lot better baseball player if he hits from the right side permanently. But regardless, I'd say he's about properly rated. Who we got next here? River Ryan. River Ryan, honestly, I haven't heard much about River Ryan before this season, and I know he's performed well at times for the Dodgers, so I mean, that has to make him a little underrated, right? Miggy! Dude, Miggy! He got so bad at the end of his career that nobody was talking about his legacy, at least relative to like how good he used to be, and not just like his overall accomplishments. Dude was literally like a Pujols light for a solid 15 years. He deserves his flowers. I'd say he's slightly underrated at this point. It's hard to say about a guy who has over 500 career homers, but I would say that he's slightly underrated at this point. Wainwright. I'd say Wainwright's about properly rated. I mean, people aren't really making a huge Hall of Fame case for him. He's probably not going to get in the Hall of Fame, but he's remembered fondly because he helped the Cardinals win 2 World Series, which is huge. I mean, look at the amount of teams that have won 2 World Series over the last 25 years. It's very small. Him, Molina, Pujols, they were really the core of those teams. So he deserves all the credit that he gets. And again, I don't see people overrating him. So I'd say he's about properly rated. What we got next year? Brent Rooker's underrated. He has to be. The market that he plays in and the production he's had this year, he has to be underrated. He was even underrated by his own team because they kept him around when they could have traded him for a huge package. They should have known they could have traded him for a huge package that would help them in the future. But I guess they were underwhelmed. Like, I heard they weren't really shopping him all that much either, which again is another testament to him being underrated. Brent Rooker, amazingly underrated. What we got next here? Shohei. Dude, Shohei I'd say is properly rated. I mean, people are talking about Shohei like he's going to be one of the best like players in Major League Baseball history, and he is. Like, he's unique. He has incredible production on both sides of the ball, or on both sides, basically pitching and hitting. So he's living up to the hype, man, and he has a lot of hype, but he lives up to it. I'd say he's properly rated. Babe Ruth properly rated as well. Same thing, man. He's seen as one of the faces of Major League Baseball for the whole of like the history of the sport, and he helped redefine the sport. You have to say that that's about properly rated, right? Thank you so much, everybody who's in here. We got 260 baseball lovers in here. Thank you so much. If you guys haven't liked so far, feel free to like. And then also feel free, if you do have the ability to throw a donation in there. If you do, I'll read your message off immediately. It doesn't have to be just about the prompt, it can be about whatever you want. And I'll shout you out by name because if you support me, I want to support you too. Thank you so much, everybody who's in here. I love talking baseball. Let's get back to it. Who we got next? Ozuna from the Braves. I mean, this year he's like slightly underrated, but I don't know. He made the All-Star game. He ended up going to the home run derby, and frankly, in some ways, there's an argument made he shouldn't even be platformed because he's like actually a piece of crap. So, I would say he's about properly rated. It feels gross to say, but I'd say he's about properly rated. Javier Baez is overrated, and again, any guy who has a huge contract like he's had, and then the terrible level of production he's had, we have to call that overrated, right? Like, there's no doubt about that. Freddie Freeman is, I'd say, underrated nationally. I mean, when we're talking about guys who are surefire Hall of Famers, I feel like you're going to name 2 or 3 guys before Freddie Freeman, and then you're going to be like, oh yeah, Freddie Freeman. He deserves to be prominent in the conversation, man. There are very few guys out there capable of hitting 500 career doubles in the modern game. He might get 600. I mean, there's an argument to be made he might get 700 if he can maintain the peak that he's been on for the last like 4 or 5 seasons. So, dude is in my opinion, really underrated. Again, next year. Buster Posey. I say he's about properly rated, right? I mean, he's seen as like one of the greatest catcher peaks of all time. That's what he was. Oh my God, $5 donation from the Prankin family. Thank you so much, guys. Keep it up. Thank you so much. And do Zerpa or Bobby Baseball. Angel Zerpa. I like Angel Zerpa. That's pretty good. I'd say he's pretty underrated. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, he had a pretty productive season so far this year, and pretty much no one's talking about it. I'll see his numbers like once in a while. We're talking about relief pitchers. But I mean, the fact that I don't see them more means he's got to be a little underrated, right? So thank you so much for the $5 donation. And in terms of Bobby Witt, I'll answer both because thank you so much for supporting me. Of course, I'll answer both. Hey guys, if you want to do that too, if you want to throw a little donation there and then throw a couple players, I'll answer both. Bobby Witt Jr., I would say, is about properly rated. I mean, he's seen as one of the faces of Major League Baseball. He should be. He's seen as an MVP frontrunner. He should be. He's doing everything he has to maintain that status. I mean, he might be the best hitter in Major League Baseball outside of Aaron Judge. So, dude deserves all the shine that he's getting. He is getting a lot of it, though, so I'd say about properly rated. Thank you so much for the donation. Thank you so much, you guys, for the support in the stream. It means the world to me. It helps me keep doing this, man. You know, like, it's a decent amount of work running a baseball YouTube channel and taking the time out to do this. It always feels worth it because you guys always are so supportive and amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. Let's get back to it. What we got? Cedric Mullins. I'd say Cedric Mullins is about properly rated. I mean, 2 years ago, he would have been underrated, right? He had a really good run there for a couple of years in there. But this year, he's fallen off a little bit. I think he's batting 8th in the lineup now, 7th or 8th. Holiday was batting 7th or 8th today, right? So I think he's batting 7th. So he's not hitting quite up that level that he used to. I know he's not the best defensive center fielder as well. So I'd say he's about properly rated. Let's check it going fast, man. You guys love throwing players in there. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Trey Turner, love your content. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the support. Trey Turner. I would say Trey Turner's about properly rated. I mean, there's an argument to be made he could be a little overrated. I mean, he got elected to the All-Star game as a starter over Francisco Lindor, right? However, I'm not going to knock him for that. He didn't do that. So I would say he's about probably properly rated. I mean, he's been performing like a superstar this year as far as I can tell. And then on top of that, I mean, he's had a really good start to his career. He could be potentially in the Hall of Fame conversation in like 5 to 7 years, depending on how he ages. I'm not confident he's going to age super well. So that's part of the reason that I'm not like going to sing his praises on that front necessarily. But dude deserves to be considered to be one of the top shortstops in Major League Baseball, and he is. So I would say properly rated. A-Rod, it's tough with steroid guys, right? Because legacy-wise, he's probably underrated. I mean, when you're asking people top 5, top 10 baseball players of all time, A-Rod's never going to enter that conversation. And when you look at it, he might be the best infielder ever, if we're going to go with metrics, unencumbered by steroids. However, the roids definitely do a lot of the heavy lifting there, especially because apparently he took them early on in his career. So that would have really helped with his maturation as a young player. So that hurts him a little bit. So I would say he's probably a little underrated, but I understand it. I wouldn't necessarily advocate for him to get more shine. So Seth Lugo's underrated. He's had a ace level season this year. I don't think anybody expected that out of him. So I would say he's a little underrated this year. Honestly, a lot of the Royals are. I'm sure it seems like a decent amount of Royals fans in here. You guys, your team's doing well, and you deserve a little more shine than you're getting, but don't worry. You'll get it as soon as playoff time comes. Thank you so much, guys. We're at 90 likes. I don't think we've ever had 90 likes at 29 minutes. Thank you guys so much. Trying to get to 100 likes. Thank you guys so much for the super chats as well. It's extremely helpful. Helps keep the stream going. So thank you so much. If you do want to throw a player or even two players into a super chat, I'll answer it immediately no matter what I'm talking about, because if you support me, I want to support you too. Also shout you out by name. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate the support. Omar Vizquel. I'd say Omar Vizquel is... I mean, I'd say probably properly rated. I mean, he's seen as one of the best defenders of all time, but like a light hitter, and that's what he was. He's never going to get in the Hall of Fame, partially because of what he did off the field, which is horrible, atrocious. If you're not aware of it, you should look it up. But I don't think that people talk about him like he was better than he was, or pretty much, or even worse. I'd say he's about properly rated. Teoscar Hernandez. I'd say Teoscar Hernandez might be a little overrated, just because, I mean, he won the home run derby. He had a really good start to this year, but his overall advanced metrics aren't insane. He's always been kind of like a mediocre fielder in left field, if not a terrible fielder at times. So I would say I'd say he probably slants a little overrated. Michael A. Taylor. Is he having a good season? I'm actually not that aware of what Michael A. Taylor is currently doing at the moment. If he's having a good season, he's definitely a little underrated, because, I mean, I haven't heard really anything about his season so far, but I know historically he's been a really good fielder, you know? So I'd say he probably slants underrated if he's getting consistent playing time and producing at any level. Jose Altuve. I'd say Jose Altuve is about properly rated, right? I mean, he's seen as the face of that franchise. He deserves to be seen as the face of that franchise. It's him and Jordan. I don't think he deserves the hate that he gets, but of course, on the back end, I also don't think he deserves that MVP. So I think that balances out a little bit. I think that he's about properly rated. Thank you guys so much. About to hit 100 likes. We're at 98 likes. Thank you guys so much. It's been one of the most consistently performing streams in terms of the amount of people in here. So thank you guys so much. Feel free. Keep throwing your favorite players in there. If you do want to skip the line and get my take on something immediately, you can send in a super chat attached with a message. I'll shout you out by name, and I'll also answer whatever you want to throw in there immediately, because you support me. I want to support you back. Thank you so much. Jose Ramirez. Jose Ramirez has to be considered a little underrated. I wouldn't say he's incredibly overrated, or I wouldn't say he's incredibly underrated, just because people do talk about him a lot as an underrated player. But at the end of the day, when you're as consistent as he is, and you still don't get the national media coverage because you play in a place like Cleveland, it's going to end up being you're going to slant a little underrated. So that's what I would say about that. Tommy Pham. He plays for the White Sox. I know he's been okay this year, but he hasn't been great. So I'd say he's been about properly rated. I know he moved to the Cardinals as well, so maybe if he ends up performing well in the playoffs this year, if the Cardinals make the playoffs, we can start talking about him as underrated. But that's where I'd say he's about it. That's where I'd say he's right now. Pete Alonso. I'd say Pete Alonso's about properly rated. Some people would say he's overrated. I think that's a little mean. Text up on OBS. Yeah, I'm looking into potentially doing OBS. I've actually never streamed on an OBS before, so I'll potentially look into that. But I'll say Pete Alonso, I'd say probably slants a little bit overrated per a lot of people's estimation. But in my opinion, I mean, dude slugs every single season. He's so consistent. He's not a good fielder. Everybody knows that. Nobody's expecting him to hit 270, 280. So, I mean, I'd say from my perspective, he's got to be considered properly rated. Ellie De La Cruz, slightly underrated. People keep talking about him like he's overrated, but they're not aware of the numbers. Dude is literally, I think the second most valuable player in all of the National League at this point. He's jockeying back and forth with Ketel Marte. So I would say that that's underrated in my opinion, when people keep talking about him like he's overrated, for basically no reason. So we're at 105 likes. Thank you guys so much, man. Let's try to get to 110 likes. Everybody who's in here, I really appreciate you guys. Everybody supporting this streaming so far has been amazing. If you do want to consider donating, basically you can skip the line, throw whatever you want in that message. I'll answer it immediately no matter what I'm talking about. Also shout you out by name, because if you support me, I'll support you too. Thank you so much. Who we got next year? Luis Rengifo. I'd say Rengifo's probably, he has to be considered a little underrated because he did have a pretty decent year this year, but I'm not confident in his numbers going forward because his advanced metrics aren't that good. He doesn't hit the ball as hard as he used to. I'd like to see him get back to that player mold. I think he'd be a better player at a 270 with 25 homers than he is at a 300 with 4 homers. Who's the guy with the bloody sock? That would be Curt Schilling, my man. Curt Schilling, one of the best players ever not to be in the Hall of Fame. Piece of crap in real life, it seems, but one of the best to do it who's not in the Hall. We got next here, Kyle Schwarber. I'd say Schwarber's probably about properly rated. I mean, he's considered to be one of the preeminent sluggers in the game. He is. No one knows him for his defense. He obviously shouldn't be known for his defense. His base running is crap, which, you know, again, no one knows him for that. So I'd say he's about properly rated. Ronald Acuna Jr. I'd say Acuna is about properly rated as well. He's seen as one of the faces of baseball. He is this season maybe a little overrated, but he didn't get to play enough. I think he could have came back from his if he had like an injury that was more like a month-long thing. He could have came back and saved his season to some degree. So I'm gonna say right now he's about properly rated. But if next year is like this year, he's gonna start slanting towards overrated. We got next here, Jarren Duran. I'd say well, the Red Sox haven't been getting a lot of shine this year nationally, so we have to say that he's a little underrated, right? I know he won the All-Star MVP, but still, I mean, great fielding center fielders with really good speed and solid pop. Like you gotta give them their flowers. I don't mind answering guys multiple times as well. I mean, if you're in here and you just came in and you want to get my take on a player, yeah, I don't mind answering multiple times. Like, for example, Shohei. I saw someone saying that 15% of the requests are Shohei. Why are you dodging him? I did answer him earlier. I'll answer him again. Shohei's properly rated. He's seen as one of the greatest baseball players of all time. He deserves to be. However, you know, at the end of the day, I can't really say he's underrated because he gets all that media attention, right? And for the people who are saying, like, oh, he's better than Babe Ruth and all that, that may be a little bit of a stretch considering he hasn't played even 10 years in the big leagues yet. However, that's not to discredit Shohei and the way that he's changed Major League Baseball as a whole. So I'd say Shohei, about properly rated. Tarik Skubal, I'd say Tarik Skubal's a little underrated. He plays in Detroit, which is kind of a smaller baseball market, and people are talking about him like he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, which he deserves to be, but maybe not quite to the level of the dominance he's shown this year. Some people aren't aware of the Tarik Skubal ascendancy in the way that I'd like to see. Wilson Contreras is underrated at this point, man. He signed that big contract. He had a bad year last year, relatively speaking. This year he's been way better. He's been one of the best hitting catchers when he's been healthy. He did get hurt, but when it comes down to it, he still has had one of the best levels of production from a catcher this season. So it's definitely underrated at this point. Pat Venditti, underrated as hell. Bro didn't even get a chance throughout the course of his Major League career to be on a Major League team during his peak, even though he was consistently throwing up some of the best numbers for a minor league reliever in baseball. So definitely underrated in my opinion. What we got next here? Steven Kwan. Steven Kwan's about properly rated in my opinion. Maybe slightly underrated because, you know, yeah, slightly underrated. I said that earlier. Just because he's not known nationally in the way I think a lot of guys would be if he was playing on a more high-profile team. So, yeah, I'd say he's about properly rated. Yeah, I see so many people in here saying, oh, why are you guys mentioning a player multiple times? A lot of people coming in for the first time. I'm completely fine with answering a player multiple times. For example, Freddie Freeman. Keep getting him. Completely fine with answering Freddie Freeman again. I'd say Freddie Freeman's definitely underrated just because he's having a Hall of Fame level career. And people aren't talking about him like he's one of the Hall of Fame locks in the way that I'd like to see them talk about him. So I'd say Freddie Freeman's definitely underrated. Thank you so much, guys. About to get to 120 likes. Thank you guys so much for the support on these lives, man. It really means the world to me, man. I love talking baseball with you guys. Anybody who has an ability potentially to donate as well, it's very helpful, help support the stream. If you do, you can throw a player or multiple players into a message. I'll answer both immediately, and I'll shout you out by name because if you support me, I want to support you too. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into the stream. Let's hop back into it. Who we got next? Logan O'Hoppy's underrated. I mean, he's maybe a top 5 hitting catcher in Major League Baseball right now. Nobody's talking about him like that. His defense is pretty bad, but I think he can potentially recover from that. He's also one of the most athletic catchers in Major League Baseball. So I would say Logan O'Hoppy is definitely underrated at this point. Brandon Nimmo's underrated. He's had like a really, really good career throughout the course of his career, but he doesn't do anything incredibly sexy, right? He gets on base a lot, which is cool. He hits for some pop, which is cool. He runs the bases well, which is cool. He fields well, which is cool. But nothing is like crazy standout, and he has been on some fairly mediocre Mets teams. So I'd say Nimmo's definitely underrated. Ben Joyce. I'd say Ben Joyce is properly rated. You could make an argument he's underrated because of what he's done this year, but think how much social media attention that guy gets because he throws so hard. That inevitably is going to slant that a little bit back the other way. I'd say Ben Joyce is about properly rated. We got next here. And Andres Jimenez. Dude, Andres Jimenez is one of the, like, underrated players from the perspective of guys don't realize how much his defense is worth. Like, yeah, he's not the best hitter. A couple years ago, he had a pretty decent year hitting, but most years, he's not going to be that good of a hitter. But, man, he runs the bases well, and he's a really, really valuable fielder at second base. So I'd say he's underrated a little bit. Ramon Urias, I'd say Ramon Urias might be slightly overrated. If you remember, a couple years back, he had a really good year where I think he hit over 300. And a lot of guys were starting to talk about him like he could maybe be that guy for the Orioles to kind of be that pure hitting presence, maybe batting second, batting first. And he hasn't matured like that since. So I'd say he's about a little overrated. Cole Reagans. Dude, Cole Reagans is still underrated. I mean, he's arguably the ace on a team that's wasn't really much was expected of coming this year. It's between him and there are other. Oh, dude, I'm forgetting his name right now. But yeah, it's between him and the other guy. He's performed well. He's had like stretches where he was less good and stretches where he was better. But at the end of the day, like yeah, he's performed well this season, and he doesn't get a lot of shine in comparison because he's playing in that market. So he's a little underrated in my opinion. Riley Green's underrated again. Anybody who plays for these small market teams and is playing above their stature, they're not going to get the national coverage that they deserve. So Riley Green deserves more coverage than he's been getting. He's definitely one of the surprising breakout players. I know he had a good year last year, but this season, to do it to the level he's doing it, for the consistency that he's doing it, he deserves more shine. Definitely a little underrated. Mookie Betts is properly rated, seen as an Inner Circle Hall of Fame member when he retires. He definitely is. But he gets a lot of the attention that Freeman should get to some degree. So I think that that's kind of what siphons a little bit off of Freeman. Same thing for Kershaw, who I would say is also about properly rated. Inner Circle Hall of Famer, maybe a little underrated from the perspective of being maybe the best pitcher ever since integration. But he still does get a lot of shine. Mason Wynn is underrated, my man. Mason Wynn is underrated. Dude's running the bases, I think, better than a lot of people thought he was going to when he first got drafted. And he also is hitting the ball with a different profile. People used to think that he might be a bit of a boom or bust type of player in high school. He wasn't seen as having like the most advanced hit tool, but he's been slapping the ball around, getting on base, running really fast. And his advanced metrics weren't as good as, like last time I saw them, they weren't as good as I think they could be. But I think he has the potential to be a guy that's a perennial 5 to 10 outs above average at shortstop, which is crazy valuable. Thank you guys so much for all the support on the live, man. We're at 126 likes, trying to get to 130 likes. Anybody who has the ability to potentially donate really would be appreciated. Help support the stream. I'll also answer any message you put in there, regardless if it's the over the prompt or anything else. I'll shout you out by name as well, because if you support me, I want to support you too. Thank you guys so much for considering. Let's hop to it. Who we got next here? Giancarlo Stanton. Giancarlo Stanton, I'd say, is probably about properly rated. I mean, he's seen as like a guy who is a little past his prime. He should be. He's definitely past his prime. But he can still hit the crap out of the ball, but it's not going to be with a lot of consistency. The injuries are going to get in there. The inconsistency is going to get in there. He still swings and misses a lot. Swings at some terrible pitches, but, you know, I think people understand that about him as a player. Bryson Stott. Bryson Stott, I'd say, is about properly rated. Oh, Liam, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Bryson Stott, I'd say, is about properly rated. I mean, he's seen as one of those guys who's a solid ball player on a good club. That's what he is. Keep checking it, moving so fast, man. For anybody, if you want to guarantee that I'm going to see your message, feel free to throw it into a super chat. I'll also shout you out by name. It can go in so fast that I can gloss over certain players multiple times. So if you do want to guarantee that I'm going to see it, that's the best way to do it. Thank you so much regardless. It also does help support the stream. We got next. Jorge Soler. I think Jorge Soler is slightly overrated. I mean, look at the contract he got. Dude's not going to be numerically that great of a player. And then on top of that, this year he's not been hitting with the power you'd like to see. Just had a terrible play earlier as well in the game versus the Rockies, where he basically let a fly ball drop because I think he was calling off the other guys. He definitely shouldn't have been. He's not going to offer anything in the field. He's not going to offer anything on the bases. So he needs to hit a little more if he wants to justify that contract. Ellie De La Cruz is underrated, my man. 100% he's underrated. Think of what he's managed to do so far in his major league career, and people still call him overrated. That means he's underrated in my book. Zach Neto is a little underrated, man. He plays in Anaheim. As you can tell, I go to some Angels games. He plays in Anaheim, so that's going to already hurt his stature. But I think he has a chance to be like a Francisco Lindor light. Field well, run well, hit pretty well. Maybe not all to the level that someone like Lindor can, but I mean, if he can do all of that at 75% of the capacity, he'll be an incredible ball player going forward and with a lot of value to a team that needs every ounce they can get. Salvador Perez, I think he'll be a Hall of Famer. Marcelo Ozuna, thank you so much for the sub, by the way. I'll answer both of those. So Salvador Perez is a little underrated in my opinion. I think a lot of people kind of wrote him off when they realized that his defensive metrics weren't all that good, but dude still has really good OPS plus for a catcher. He's like 20 points above average, I think, for a catcher. And then on top of that too, I mean, he's had some amazing seasons hitting wise, like some of the best hit seasons we've seen over the last 10 years from a catcher hitting wise. He's been hitting well this season. I think he's going to move more into that DH role as time goes on, just because his catching is getting a little worse over time, on top of the fact that it never was all that good, specifically his arm. But I think he's still a little underrated. If he gets to 300 career homers, we should consider his Hall of Fame case a little bit more, in my opinion, for a catcher. And then Marcelo Ozuna, I would say Marcelo Ozuna is about properly rated. He makes me gross to talk about just because he's done the things that he's done. But I can't lie. He's having a productive year this year. So, yeah. We got next here. Sorry. Stretch a second. Jackson Holliday's a little underrated, in my opinion. A little underrated. Got a little moth in here. Jackson Holliday's a little underrated. People are talking about him like he's like washed up after he had a tough couple week stretch to start his career. I didn't think he was washed up. I just thought he wasn't ready. He's proven that he is ready now. But there is a lot of talent evaluators out there that are saying, like, they're still singing his praises, still saying he's going to be one of the great players in baseball going forward. So because of that, I can't say he's profoundly underrated, but I'd say he's slightly underrated in the national baseball consciousness at this point. We got next here, Christian Moore. Christian Moore, I mean, he's getting a little bit of shine now, right? But he still has to be considered a little underrated considering he wasn't drafted in the first, 5, right? So because of that, he a little underrated, right? Or drafted in the first 3, sorry. Mark Melancon, underrated, dude. Mark Melancon was one of the best closers in baseball for a solid 10 years, right? Or a solid 5 years. Thank you so much for the super chat. Chris Wickman, thank you so much. We have Joe Adell. Thank you so much for the support in this stream, guys. Really appreciate it. But Joe Adell, I would say Joe Adell is that's kind of tough because he's been up and down this year, but he's been a really good fielder. I'd say he's about properly rated. He's still seen as kind of underperforming relative to his potential, which he is. But he's shown flashes this year, so I'd say he's about properly rated. Last year I might say he's a little overrated. So he's moving in the right direction. Churio, I'd say Churio's about properly rated. I mean, he's got to be a little underrated. He started off good, then he went a little cold, and lately he's been performing really well, really with a lot of consistency. His numbers are actually really similar to Jackson Merrill, for those of you who haven't looked at him recently. So, I mean, Jackson Merrill's been balling out. So if their numbers are relatively similar as of now, that should tell you how well Churio's been playing. So I'd say he's slightly underrated. He also plays Milwaukee, right, which is a tough baseball market to get known in nationally. Arenado, I'd say Arenado's about properly rated. Seen as an inner circle Hall of Famer as a third baseman. He's definitely going to get there if he can maintain anything relatively similar to the pace he's been performing at over the last 5 to 10 years. So, yeah, even this year, if he can throw what he's been doing this year for the last the next 4 or 5 years, he's definitely first ballot. Otherwise, he'll get in regardless, just maybe not first ballot. Man, the guys get going so fast in this chat, man. I really appreciate everybody. Trying to get to 140 likes as well. If you guys haven't liked, please consider liking. Super chats are really appreciated as well, man. It means the world, really supports the stream. On top of that as well, if you do want to throw a player in there, I'll answer it immediately. Stop whatever I'm talking about because you support me. I support you too. And I'll also shout you out by name. Thank you so much. Thank you for considering. Let's hop back into it. Nico Horner's underrated, man. If you look at what he's managed to do over the first few seasons of his Major League career, definitely got to consider him underrated, right? Base running and solid hitting and everything. Labyrinth, thank you so much, man. I recognize you from yesterday's stream. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate the $2. We have Jose Ramirez. I'd say Jose Ramirez is still slightly underrated. So, why I would say slightly, basically, is because he's talked about a lot in the baseball circle as being underrated. The more you get talked about as being underrated, the more you start being properly rated, right? Because that attention is kind of what dictates a lot of what we're talking about here. However, he still plays in a market that's not the biggest, and he's still performing extremely well in that market. And he's been performing that well for the last 8 seasons, so he has to be considered slightly underrated. However, he's moving towards properly rated because people are starting to give him the shine he deserves. I'd like to see him continue to do that. Until he's really in the Hall of Fame conversation nationally, though, he has to be considered underrated, in my opinion. Thank you so much for the support, Labyrinth. Really appreciate you. On to the next. Who we got next here? Hunter Green is underrated, bro. So what he's been doing this year is crazy. And again, in Cincinnati, not the biggest baseball market, he definitely has to be considered a little underrated. Hecker Beluga, I saw you from previous streams. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate your sports. Appreciate your consistency in here. You said Ketel Marte. Ketel Marte's underrated, dude. This season, specifically, last year was great, but this season, he's going to be top 3 in MVP voting. Holy moly. His defense is crazy at second, hits the crap out of the ball. He might hit 40 homers if he can continue to be as hot as he has been over the last 2 seasons, or last month, over the next 2 months, so. That's incredible. I don't think anybody had on their bingo card he's going to hit 40 homers in a year. Gavin Lux is overrated, my man. Gavin Lux, he's still seen as one of people still talk about him like he could be a potential big piece for the Dodgers, but man, when are we going to admit that the guy's a little overrated? He hasn't been producing at all over the last 5 seasons, or at least not relative to his expectations. This year, people were hoping he could be a shortstop going into the year. That didn't work out. His arm's terrible. And he hasn't been hitting with really any pop throughout the course of the year. I know he's on fire right now, but is that really going to affect his numbers drastically by the end of the year? I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. Oh my God, bruh, thank you so much for the membership, man. I really appreciate that. Anybody else who wants to consider? It really helps also support the streams. $3 a month. It does wonders. Thank you so much, bruh. It also is a guarantee, by the way. If you do want to consider becoming a member, I'll see every one of your messages and I'll respond to every one of your messages because it makes your name green, makes it really easy to see on the live going forward. So thank you guys so much. Thank you so much for the support of this live. Let's get back to it. Kevin Pillar, little underrated based on what he's done this season. His whole career, I mean, dude got drafted in like the 30th round, right? That's got to be considered underrated. He had a couple solid seasons there too, especially if a guy drafted that late. Alan Craig, seen you throw that in a couple times. I appreciate that. I appreciate your perseverance. Alan Craig was underrated when he played. He's got to be considered underrated. I think I talked about him actually in an underrated podcast I did on the second channel, so he's definitely a little underrated. Ronel Blanco's a little underrated too. I know he threw the no-hitter earlier this season, but he's been solidly productive outside of that. And on an Astros team that's had its ups and downs, so most of the narrative has been surrounding like their offense and then they were hot, they were cold, all that. But he deserves a little bit more shine for what he's managed to do so far with the Astros. It does suck, the little suspension he went through and all that, but who really cares at the end of the day? Back to it. Brandon Lowe's underrated, dude. Look what he's been doing this year. I mean, like crazy, right? I mean, I'm assuming you're a Rays fan or at least Rays adjacent. Dude's been amazing this year. Matt Olson, you rock, my boy. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. Matt Olson is probably not properly rated. Last year, I would have said he's underrated just because people were talking about him like replacing Freeman from the year before as like a kind of a not that big of a deal. Like they almost were talking about him like he's not going to be able to fill those shoes. And then last year, he hit 50-some homers. Had a better year than Freeman overall, I would say. But then this year he's fallen off a little bit, so I'd say those even out a little bit, and he would move into the properly rated category for now. If he continues going like how he is going as of now, for the next couple seasons, he's going to move into overrated, but as of now, he has to stick very firmly in that category of properly rated. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much, everybody, man. Trying to hit 150 likes on the live. If you haven't liked so far, feel free to. As well as any super chats are really appreciated, and anything you put in super chat, I'll respond to immediately, and I'll also shout you out by name because if you support me, I want to support you too. So thank you so much. Best way to make sure your message gets seen. Chat can get going really fast sometimes. So let's hop back into it. We got Mike Trout. I'd say Mike Trout's about properly rated as of now. For a lot of years in there, he was underrated, but the injury issues are now balancing that out. Unfortunately for him, I want to see his legacy be that he's one of the most underrated players of all time, but if he continues getting hurt like he has been, we're going to talk about how much he could have done, and that's going to balance out how much he did. So I'd say he's about properly rated as of now. I'd love to see him get back to that place. Bruh, our member with Stanton. I'd say Stanton's about properly rated, man. He's seen as a bopper who can't run and can't field, right? And that's basically what he has been this season and last year. He started off really hot, but then he's kind of got cold, and he also got hurt again, which is also his par for the course based on what people expect from him. So I'd say he's about properly rated. Thank you so much again for your support. Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger's a little overrated based on the contract that he has right now, right? This season's not been that good for him. Last year was pretty good, but the underlying peripherals weren't all that good. So I kind of was a little skeptical of somebody giving him a huge contract, but yeah, he didn't get the biggest contract, and I'm sure the Cubs are glad they didn't give him the biggest contract. What do I think of Harper? I'd say Harper is probably about properly rated. I mean, he's seen as one of the faces of baseball. He is one of the faces of baseball. People don't talk about him like he's a great fielder or a great runner. He's not, but he doesn't need to be, right? He's an amazing hitter, and he fields pretty well at first base, right? So he does offer some value in that respect, but when it comes down to it, a great fielding first baseman's kind of like not all that useful, but he's a great hitter regardless. So I'd say he's about properly rated. Thank you again so much for your support. Christopher Morel. I'd say Christopher Morel is a little underrated. I mean, the Rays wanted him for a reason, right? I think he has 40 homer pop, 40 homer potential. Is he going to get to that? We'll see. But he has 40 homer potential, so that has to be appreciated. Mark Vientos. Dude, Mark Vientos underrated as hell, dude. I saw his numbers. I went to an Angels game here recently and saw the Mets. So cool to get to see Lindor and JD Martinez, all those guys live. But man, Vientos, I looked at his numbers up on the scoreboard, and I was like, holy moly, this guy's balling out. I knew he was started off hot, but it's great to see him maintain that. He's underrated right now in the national consciousness, especially as a third baseman. We're at 153 likes. Thank you guys so much for your support in this live, man. I really appreciate everybody who's in here talking baseball with me, man. Nothing I'd rather be doing than talking baseball with all of you guys. So thank you so much. I'll try to get to 160 likes for those of you guys who haven't liked so far. And then on top of that as well, any of the super chats are extremely appreciated. It really helps support the stream. If you do want to throw a player in there as well, I will answer that player immediately. I'll stop talking in the middle of it. whatever I'm talking about, so I can address that because you support me, I want to support you too. I'll also shout you out by name. Best way to make sure that I see your message, just because the chat can get going pretty fast sometimes. We got next here. Mark Melanson, a little underrated, man. A little underrated. Just because he was a good closer for a long time, but then he kind of fades out because he wasn't like elite. He didn't get to 400 career saves or anything like that, right? So he's gonna fade to time, but dude was dominant for a few years in there, so he has to be considered a little underrated in my opinion. Ketel Marte, I'm assuming you just hopped in. I talked about Ketel maybe like 5 minutes ago, but don't mind talking about him again. He's one of my new favorite baseball players over the last couple seasons. Bro hits the crap out of the ball. He's underrated. He's underrated, man. When it comes down to it, he's underrated. Just because he's top 3 MVP contender right now in the National League, and he's so like people aren't talking about like he's one of the preeminent players in baseball, not like a top 10 player. He is right now a top 10 player in Major League Baseball. One of the best fielders at second baseman, hitting like the crap out of the ball this season. So dude's amazing. Definitely underrated. Oh, I saw someone say I'm an Angels fan. Oh my God, Ketel got injured. I saw that he got like bent over on a slide, right? He ended up like on the ground. I didn't know that he got hurt. Like I didn't know that like, is it long term? I hope it's not long term. Anyway, what was I saying, dude? That's concerning. Oh, I hope he's fine. Oh yeah, Angels. I would say Angels are not my favorite team necessarily. I do live close to Anaheim, so I do go to a lot of their games. I really appreciate their young guys. I really want them to like be good at some point, especially because Trout would be nice to make another playoffs. But regardless, I am partial to them, but I wouldn't say I'm necessarily the hugest fan. I like a lot of Major League teams. We have John Bolin. Thank you so much for the donation, man. I really appreciate your support on this stream, man. You guys are really amazing. You make this such a fun experience for me to be able to do. Austin Young Thick Riley. Maybe we don't need the additional comments, but regardless, Austin Riley, I'd say, is probably about properly rated. Last year before, maybe a little underrated, but this year's kind of balanced out because he hasn't been that good this year. So I'd say he's about properly rated. However, he can totally get back on the underrated conversation if he starts hitting the crap out of the ball like he was the previous few seasons and fielding fairly well. So that's my take on that. Thank you so much again for the support, man. You guys are amazing. It's the best way if you do want me a guarantee that I'm going to respond to your message, especially if you're throwing a name in there that's not that common. I do have a tendency to respond to guys that are mentioned multiple times, obviously. So if you do want to see a more specific player, feel free to throw that in any level of super chat. I'll answer it immediately. I'll also shout you out by name because you support me. I support you. So thank you so much. We got next here. Alex Bregman. I'd say Alex Bregman's a little overrated just because he reinvented his game a little bit around the time that the juice ball era was happening. He had a really good couple seasons in there with the juice ball, but after that, he hasn't been as productive. Last year, he was better than this year, but this year's been a little bit uneven for him. So I'd say he's a little overrated. Not crazy, though. I see him finish strong. We got next here. Luis Rengifo. I'd say Luis Rengifo's a little underrated, but I also think that he could slink back down into the properly rated category if he doesn't get his current approach to the plate figured out. Because if you didn't know, he's been hitting the ball really softly this year. And if he doesn't get that figured out, because he was hitting the ball a lot harder in previous seasons, he might end up having some problems next year because his XBA, all his X numbers aren't that great. We got next here, Victor Robles. I mean, he's reinvented his swing a little bit, right? He's been hitting the ball a lot harder. So I would say, a little underrated. I know I'm pretty familiar with Rengifo's stats, my man. The one thing that's also a big problem for him is his fielding is atrocious, terrible. One of the worst fielders in baseball. He had like a -10 output average before he went down that season-ending injury. So, that also like contributes a little bit to that. But he still is underrated because he plays in a small market and did have a productive year this year. So that just automatically makes you a little underrated. He's hitting over 300 since he joined the Mariners. Yeah, man. I mean, dude always had a lot of potential. I really hope he can put it all together for a team that definitely didn't expect him to. 169 likes, nice number. But let's break that. Let's get to 170, maybe even 180. Anybody who's in here hasn't liked so far, feel free to. Super chats are really appreciated as well. It's the best way to make sure that I'm going to see whatever player you're throwing in there because the chat can get moving kind of fast sometimes. Also shout you out by name. Stop whatever I'm talking about to discuss whatever you throw in there because if you support me, I support you too. Let's hop back into it. What we got next here? Mike Yastrzemski. I'd say he's about properly rated. I mean, he's seen as like a role player. He's about a role player. What days do I live stream, Mighty Pat? Honestly, I've been trying to live stream more recently. I think I've live streamed the last 3 days in a row. It's kind of sporadic, relatively speaking. Kind of just live stream when I get a chance. I love talking baseball with you guys, man. You guys have been so supportive when it comes to the donations and stuff over the last few days that it's like, man, it makes it a lot easier to live stream more. So I'll say that. So thank you so much for your support on that. I want to live stream a lot. You know, I love talking to everybody. Thank you so much. Who's next? Jacob deGrom. Jacob deGrom, I'd say, is... It's tough. He used to be underrated as hell, right? Because he would lose a lot of games. People weren't talking about him like he was one of the best pitchers in baseball, in the general baseball space because of that, until he got to be undeniable. But by that point, he started getting injured. So I'd say right now, he might be... maybe properly rated. Maybe properly... Because people do look at him as injury prone, right? I can't say that people are expecting him to be healthy. So they're looking at him as injury prone. He's definitely injury prone. I want to see him make some appearances before the end of the year, man. Holy moly. Like, let's... You know... I really want to see his legacy like be a little bit more than just the broken pitcher who's one of the best peak-wise. We got next here. Jake is under... You think that Jazz Chisholm is underrated? Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from. I personally would say he's about properly rated. Dude, he got a cover a couple of years ago for the show. That can't really say it's underrated. However, he's starting to slant that direction a little bit, just because, unfortunately, right, he hasn't been able to be the most healthy over the last 2 years, even though he has been productive in the time that he wasn't healthy. So I'd say he's about properly rated. But I understand your perspective. Who we got next here? Jose Iglesias is underrated this year. I mean, undoubtedly he's underrated, right? I mean, he's been one of the best hitters in baseball since he made his season debut. Like, what the hell? No one expected that out of Jose Iglesias, of all people. But, you know, I mean, I used to be a Tiger fan when I was a lot younger. I watched him come up, man. He always looked like he had a solid approach, so it's nice to see him putting it together a little bit this year. I don't think it's going to continue for a long time, but the music stuff's amazing, too, so I'd say he's definitely underrated. You guys haven't looked up his music, man? El Candelita, I think it is. He's got some bangers, man. You should look him up. Jose Iglesias. Thank you so much for the $2 donation. We have Meat Pipe. Great name. Anthony Volpe. I'd say Anthony Volpe's about properly rated. I mean, right? I mean, no one's expecting him to hit the crap out of the ball. No one's expecting him to put up consistently good numbers at the plate, but they're expecting him to perform well in the field. From my understanding, he's performing well in the field. He's running a lot on the bases as well, relatively speaking to a lot of the other Yankees. He's been okay at the plate for stretches. Oh my God, we have another $5 donation. Thank you so much, Satan. Nice to know you watch my stream. Ron Guidry. Again, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Guidry, I'd say Guidry is underrated. I mean, dude, he's not a Hall of Famer, but holy moly, when we talk about the best Yankee pitchers of all time, only really Yankee fans talk about him, right? I mean, I feel like a lot of more peripheral fans have forgotten how good his slider used to be. The Florida Gator, if I'm not mistaken, was his nickname, right? Amazing. Vladdy! Dude's underrated this year, dude. Holy moly. Last season, I would say a little overrated, right? Because he was on the cover of a show. He was seen as like a bit of a... like one of the ascending faces of baseball, but he had a 2 WAR, and WAR's not the be-all, end-all, but it is a pretty decent metric. So that's basically he was an average player last year. But this year, dude, he's basically been the 2021 version of Vladdy with a little less pop and a little more on-base slap ball skill. So I would say he's definitely underrated. Paul Skeens gave up 4 to the Dodgers today? Holy moly, dude. That's the first time in his career I think he's given up over 4 runs, right? Or over 3 runs. I mean, dude, he's still about properly rated, man. He's seen as one of the best pitchers in Major League Baseball. If that's your blow-up is giving up 4, then I'd say he's still living up to that hype. So, yeah, he's about properly rated. Bruh, our member with Mookie Betts. I would say Mookie Betts is about properly rated. About properly rated. Seen as an Inner Circle Hall of Famer, he's going to be an Inner Circle Hall of Famer. Do I do past players? Yes, I'll do any player from any era. Bob Dahl, thank you so much for the $2 donation. Appreciate the support on the stream. Mike Piazza, and if not, Ohtani. I'll answer both for you, man, because, dude, if you're willing to give me a little donation, you're supporting the stream. I really appreciate that, man. All you guys in here commenting, whatever you can do, liking, y'all are amazing. I want to support you back. Thank you so much. So, Mike Piazza, I'd say he's about properly rated, right? He's seen as one of the best catchers of all time. Maybe a little underrated from the perspective of he was a good game caller, and his defense is looked at as terrible. But on the flip side of that, his offense was amazing. You don't know. I'm going to change my answer. Mike Piazza, a little underrated. And then Shohei Ohtani's about properly rated. I mean, he's seen as one of the best players in Major League Baseball history, and he deserves to be. I mean, he's like unique in the annals of Major League Baseball history, which when we have a sport that's 250 years old and you have players who are unique, That has to be appreciated. He might win the MVP this year as a DH, which would be the first time Major League Baseball history too. More history for him. So I'd say he's properly rated. Thank you so much for the donation. Thank you so much for the support. And yeah, you guys throw any past player in there as well. Do I think Bauer should be back in the MLB? I don't really know why he's not, if I'm being honest. I know that he, like, some people talk about him as a toxic clubhouse presence, but after those allegations got dismissed, I don't know why he wouldn't be. I think I have a sneaking suspicion there's more to the story than we know. I do like his content, though. I'm not hating on the guy. I do like his content. I've seen a lot of momentum over the years. Ketel Marte, I've answered that a few times, but you know what? He's a hot topic right now, and it's because he's been so hot at the plate. So Ketel Marte's underrated. I really hope he's okay. I know he got hurt a little bit earlier. Someone mentioned, too, that it might be a little more serious than I thought. I really hope that's not the case, because dude was going to be a top 3 MVP finisher this year in the NL, and then if Shohei got hurt or something, he might have, like, snuck in there and won. He's been a top 10 Major League Baseball player this season. Ketel Marte has. So I'd say he's slightly underrated, especially in the market out in the desert, not the biggest baseball market. Thank you so much for the support, everybody. At 191 likes, trying to get to 200 likes, man. Let's break past the 200 likes barrier. And then, too, if anybody wants to consider donating, it really helps the stream. I really appreciate it. And I'll also, any message you put in there, I'll make sure to answer. You can put 1 player, you can put 2 players. It can be anything about anything to do with baseball. I'll also shout you out by name, because if you support me, I want to support you, too. Thank you so much. We got next here. Bo Jackson. I'd say Bo Jackson's about properly rated. I mean, right? I mean, people talk about him like he's one of the most interesting Major League Baseball players ever. He definitely deserves to be talked about like that. I don't see a lot of people saying he was so great or so amazing. They talk about his arm. They talk about his athleticism, some of his pop. But again, I don't think anyone has any delusions of grandeur of how good he was. So I'd say he's about properly rated. James Outman's a little overrated. It just, when you perform like he has this season so far, you have to consider him a little overrated, right? He needs to get things back on track. I really hope he can. Jackie Robinson, I'd say Jackie Robinson is properly rated, my man. Like, maybe even bordering on underrated, because I feel like for a long time people were talking about him so heavily because of his significance, and he deserved that. But now it almost feels like people say, "Oh, he wouldn't have made the Hall of Fame if it wasn't for the significance of what he did." Have you looked at his numbers? His WAR numbers for like a guy with a 12-year career were insane. He was an insanely productive Major League Baseball player. He deserved everything that he was given on the field and off the field, just considering like what he was able to do for the significance of Major League Baseball as well. He has to be considered to be, at this point in my opinion, a little underrated by that logic. Jose Altuve will go down as one of the best second basemen. Yeah, dude. I mean, he should. I mean, the whole thing with the Astros is going to hurt him, but it really shouldn't. I mean, right? He wasn't the one getting the signs. It was a lot of the other guys on the team. So he should go down as Inner Circle Hall of Famer. If he doesn't, that'll be sad. But regardless, I think he'll still get into the Hall. So I'd say he's a little underrated from that perspective. Historically, in terms of his stature right now in Major League Baseball, I'd say he's about properly rated. He's seen as a superstar face of the franchise. He deserves that. He is. Longoria, underrated. Hell yeah, man. Longoria's a borderline Hall of Famer, dude, and you barely hear anybody talk about how good he was. Louisiana Lightning, thank you so much, man, for the correction on Guidry as well. Thank you so much. We got next here. Nico Horner, underrated. I made a community post about him on the second channel this off season because he's just like literally like, dude, you look at his his overall production as a second baseman and base runner, it's crazy. Got a moth in here. Ugh. How do you get that guy away from me? Regardless, let's get back to it. I'd root for another team, but the Angels. Oh, I'm not really a huge Angels fan or something. I like going to Angels games, but I'm a fan of every team to some capacity. So, but I mean, if I had to say like what some of my favorite teams are, I mean, my girlfriend likes the Dodgers, so I'm a little partial to the Dodgers, obviously. I like the Yankees, what they've built with their young core, as well as a couple of their big boppers. Big fan of Aaron Judge. They're one of my teams as well. Phillies are cool as well. Jackson Merrill. Dude, Jackson Merrill right now has to be considered a little underrated, right? I mean, he's been literally every single night having clutch hits for the Padres. And yet, you know, I mean, when we're talking about the Rookie of the Year conversation, I feel like unless you're really into baseball, you're not going to necessarily talk about him as the front runner. But he probably should be the front runner right now in the National League. So, yeah. Aside from Skeens, obviously aside from Skeens, it's gonna be him and Skeens. We'll see if Skeens can like maintain the level of production he's had. But I mean, Merrill's been playing every day, so that could be an interesting conversation. Yohan Moncada, I see someone. I don't play baseball, nor do I know anything about it. Yohan Moncada, dude, I have some bad news for you. Yohan Moncada is not good anymore. he would be considered overrated, right? Just because he used to have a stature as being a guy who was a top prospect. For a couple years now, he was pretty good, and then he faded. Poor guy. I really hope that he can make something of his career again, because, man, you hate to see those guys who are top prospects never do much with it. Just hit 200 likes on live. Thank you guys so much. Also hit 69 minutes on it so far, so that's also nice. Thank you guys so much for your support. Let's try to hit 210. Everybody who's in here who hasn't hit a like, feel free to. Also, if you do want to consider donating, it's huge. It really helps support the stream. And if you throw a message in there, I'll answer it immediately no matter what I'm talking about, because you support me, I want to support you too. You can throw 1, 2 guys in there. And then on top of that as well, I'll shout you out by name, because again, if you support me, I want to support you. Let's hop back to it. What do we got next? Chipper Jones. I'd say Chipper Jones is probably about properly rated. I mean, he seems like a top 5 third baseman of all time, top 10 third baseman of all time. It's about that. I was actually watching Chipper Jones highlights earlier today. Dude was really good. Chapman. I'd say Aroldis Chapman's in the annals of baseball history. He might end up being a little underrated, because I don't think he's going to end up making the Hall of Fame. And that guy deserves to make the Hall of Fame. Thank you so much, Labyrinth, for the $2 donation. We got my guys Chris Carpenter and Yadi Molina. Well, I'd say Chris Carpenter's a little underrated. He had a really solid career. People, you're not going to talk about a career that's really solid 5-10 years later. And Yadi Molina's a first ballot Hall of Famer. So, dude's I'd say about properly rated, because maybe a little underrated, because some people are debating that. So, yeah, maybe a little underrated. And then we got Rex Foti. Thank you so much. I recognized you from yesterday as well, Rex, or from earlier today, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you so much for the $2. We have Austin Wells and Lucas Heel. Austin Wells is underrated as hell. Dude has a chance to be I believe, top 10, top 15 catcher in Major League Baseball. Has been hitting like crazy over the last 2 months. If I'm not mistaken, he plays defense pretty well. And then Lucas Heel, I'd say, is I'd say about properly rated. Earlier in the year, he was really underrated because he was like balling out. And when you ball out in New York and you weren't expected to, I think that it can deceive some people into believing you're getting more shine than you are. So I'd say back then he was a little underrated, but he's had a cold streak here over the last, I think 5 starts. The last couple were better than the first few of that streak. But overall, I'd say he's about properly rated as of now. Thank you so much for the donation. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for supporting the stream. Who we got next here? Corbin Carroll. I'd say Corbin Carroll is about a little overrated this year, man. His overall metrics from last year, all of them have fallen through the floor. He's been hot recently, but I'm not sure if he can replicate what he did last year unless he can start reinventing his game a little bit. I know he got hurt earlier this year as well. He was playing with a bum arm. That's going to affect your production, but as of right now, he has to be a little overrated. Thank you, Nick. Impressive ball knowledge. I appreciate it, man. That's what I do for a living. I would hope I'd have some knowledge. Yeah, Dansby Swanson's wife, everybody. Congratulations, obviously, to Dansby Swanson's wife, right? Just won a gold medal in the women's Olympic soccer. It's amazing. If you didn't know, Dansby Swanson's actually married to an Olympian on the soccer team. It's amazing, right? We got next here. 211 likes, by the way. Let's try to get to 220. Thank you so much. World Series pick for this year. It's tough because, I mean, look at last year. Multiple wild card winners in the World Series, right? But, I mean, if I had to guess right now, I'd say Phillies still might have my vote, even though I know they've been rough recently. But if they've been able to do what they've been doing in the playoffs every year, making deep runs, and this year they've still been, they've been better than they were those years, I think that might bode well. However, don't quote me on that. Again, it's really tough to predict World Series winners. If you could, Vegas would be doing it like crazy, right? Big Bear. Ozuna. Well, I'm not a big fan of Ozuna, if I'm being honest. Ozuna's a piece of crap, I think, personally. And then on top of that, I think that he got a lot of shine early. People are talking about him like he's going to be an MVP contender. He's definitely not that at this point. I'd say he's about properly rated. I don't like talking about him that much, though. It kind of grosses me out a little bit. Thank you guys so much. 215 likes, trying to get to 220. Thank you so much for the support on the live so far. I really appreciate anybody who has the ability to do a potential super chat. That's amazing. It's also a guarantee that I'll see your message because this chat can be going pretty fast sometimes. I'll read your message out loud, answer it, and I'll also shout you out by name because if you donate to the channel, I really appreciate it, and you deserve to be treated like that. Thank you so much. Wander Franco in prison. Well, I'd say that makes sense. Dude should be in prison. So that's a properly rated take regardless, huh? DJ LeMahieu has to be considered a little overrated based on what his expectations. People are expecting him to be a solid hitter this year who can play over the diamond, and he's only recently started getting it together at the plate. So overrated season so far. Hopefully we can keep pulling it back together. Roki Sasaki. Dude is properly rated. Seen as one of the top pitching prospects when he becomes available, he deserves it. Deserves to be considered properly rated, in my opinion. Deserves all the shine. Shota Imanaga. I have to say that Imanaga's probably a little underrated at this point. I mean, look at what coming in this year, people were talking about, like, oh, he could end up being like a one, he could end up being like, like a 2, 3, maybe 4 starter for the Cubs. Dude's been their solid 1. He's been an ace all year. So I think that he's definitely a little underrated in my opinion. Started getting some shine, but then the Cubs fell off and didn't talk about it as much. He's been solid overall. He's been impressive. Fart? Dude, Fart is perfectly rated, man. Machado, do you think Machado's overrated? I'd say Machado is about properly rated. He's seen as a potential Hall of Famer, as a more than likely future Hall of Famer. We have Kurt Lee Vlogs, the $2 donation. Thank you so much, man. Nolan Gorman. I'd say Nolan Gorman's a little underrated, if I'm being honest. He's not talked about as one of the prominent members in the Cardinals, right? Most of the time when you're talking about the face of the franchise, but he's a really solid hitter at second base. He needs to get his defense up a little bit, but I mean, when you're a guy who's not going to be talked about as like in the top 3, but he's as productive as he is of the team, I'd say that he has to be considered a little underrated, right? What do you guys think? We got next. Fernando Tatis Jr. I'd say Fernando Tatis Jr. is a little underrated this year. Relatively speaking. Oh, is Gorman struggling now? Last time I saw he was doing pretty well. Maybe he's went on a huge cold streak since then. But Fernando Tatis Jr., I'd say he's probably a little underrated at this point. People still talk about him like it's all the roids and all that, but he was hitting really, really well until he got injured this year. And last year was amazing feeling-wise. If he can put it all together, he can still get back up to that 7-8 WAR territory, which would be amazing and borderline Hall of Fame trajectory based on what he did early in his career as well. So I'd say he's a little underrated. Victor Martinez is underrated. Underrated, my man. Like, that's a great one. I appreciate that callback that time. Like I said, I was a Tigers fan for a long time, and he was, like, always one of their solid, like, really good, consistently good hitters. $2 donation from Orange Juice with Dylan Cease. Thank you so much for the support in the live, man. Really appreciate all you guys. You guys really come through and make this feel amazing to do, and I love talking baseball with you guys. Dylan Cease. I'd say Dylan Cease is about properly rated. He started off poorly. Been amazing recently. I think he's one of those guys that's always going to have 10 amazing starts, like 10 of the best starts in baseball, 10 of the worst starts in baseball, and then 10 of the most mediocre starts in baseball. So I think he's about properly rated. If he can go into the playoffs this year and do amazing, I think he could move into the underrated category a bit. But I mean, the White Sox the White Sox got a decent haul for him as well, which I think is also a good matrices of how good a guy is seen as being, right? I'm going to take a drink here of my zero sugar drink. Yeah. My Snapple. Throat's getting a bit parched. Hold this up for a second. Thank you so much. Little break. We back to it. Brent Rooker's underrated. Dude, to not get like a all-star spot based on the season he was having, you have to consider him underrated, right? Like, holy moly, dude. Dude, he's like got a near 1,000 OPS and it wasn't in the All-Star game. Like, dude, he might hit 40 homers this year if he continue to get hot, or he continue to be as hot as he has over the last few months. Yeah, we love Brent Rooker over here. If you haven't followed his Twitter, you should. Am I sponsored by Snapple? I'd love to be, but no. I do like Snapple though. A good Snapple hits on a hot day. Pete Crow Armstrong. I'd say Pete Crow Armstrong is about properly rated. Still seen as one of the top prospects in Major League Baseball. Hasn't put it all together yet, but he has a huge amount of skills. I think he definitely has a chance to. Favorite sunflower seeds? Is that what you're asking? I'd say my favorite sunflower seeds are probably ranch. Or I'm basic. I don't want to... Nothing really all that different. I do love pickle sunflower seeds, though, too. If you guys haven't had dill sunflower seeds, amazing. Should try them. I actually got sponsored by a sunflower seed company. It's going to be in a future video up here. They've been sending me some great ones, so I'll review those for you guys. I'll have you check them out. Little Smackin' sunflower seeds. They're amazing. That's basically free promotion right now because I don't have a code or anything yet, but go get some Smackin' sunflower seeds. Robbie Hyde, $2 donation. Thank you so much, man. John Lester. Bro, great. First of all, that's an amazing shout out. Thank you so much for making me talk about John Lester because I love John Lester. Dude is underrated as hell, man. Dude, you borderline Hall of Famer if you look at his overall numbers, especially in the modern era of pitching. Dude's one of the most consistent pitchers of all time. when we talk about like 150 innings plus seasons in the modern era, it's crazy. Crazy. And his production was really good at the height of his career too. Was integral to that Cubs 2016 World Series as well. Hell yeah, Robbie Hyde. We got next here, Chase Headley, terrible third baseman. Bro, leave Chase Headley alone. He's properly rated in my opinion. I mean, no one is looking at him and being like, oh, look at this superstar. Except for maybe 2012 with the Padres, he was really good. But besides that, nobody was looking at him as a superstar. So I'd say he's about properly rated. I'll get on my man, Chase. 224 likes. Thank you guys so much, man, for all your support on this live support. I'm going to keep going at it for a while, man. So feel free to like if you haven't so far. Trying to get to 230 likes. We got $33 in donations so far. Thank you guys so much, man. You make this streaming stuff so fun. Feel free, if you do have an ability to, a donation goes a long way to help supporting the stream. And on top of that, you can put any message you want in the donation. I'll react to it immediately, because if you're supporting me, I'll support you too, or I want to support you too. And then on top of that, I'll read your name off by name. Thank you so much. Bruh, one of our members, Camila Doval. I'd say Camilo Doval is probably a little underrated. I mean, he has the potential to be one of the best closers in Major League Baseball for a long time. And we don't really talk about that. Can it be current or older? Dude, it can be any era of Major League Baseball, period. I don't care. 90s, 1960s. You throw anyone at me, and if I'm aware of them, I'll answer, obviously. If I don't know who they are, it'll be tough. But Sean. We have Sean with a $2 donation. Thank you so much for the support. We have Colby Thomas. If you don't know him, Jack Wilson. Colby Thomas, I don't know enough about his stats. I do know the name, but I don't know enough about his stats. I will say, Jack Wilson, underrated. Dude was a really good shortstop, if I remember correctly, for the Pirates for a while. Looked at his stat sheet a while back. Underrated, in my opinion, because, I mean, dude, being a solid Major League shortstop for any length of time, you deserve to be commended. But if you're not that guy who's going to have that big legacy, you're not going to really get talked about as time goes on. So definitely underrated. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for the $2 donation. You guys are amazing. Let's get back to it. Do I think the Mariners make the postseason? I mean, yeah, but that doesn't say a lot about their performance. I think it's the weakness of their division largely this year. Their hitting is horrid. Dude, they're hitting 203 with runners in scoring position this year. Terrible. So they have to get that up if they want to actually make it deep into the playoffs. But they have the pitching at least to make a run. So I hope they can do something, man. I'm rooting for the Mariners. Ben Rice. I'd say Ben Rice is about properly rated. I mean, he's seen as like a guy who's going to be big for the Yankees going forward, but he's not going to be the linchpin, right? So yeah, I'd say he's about properly rated. My favorite prospect, not yet the majors. I mean, I don't know, man. That's tough. James Woods just got called up. He was my favorite. That was in there in the minors for a long time. So, like early this season at least. So I would say him. I also really like Samuel Basayo. You know him, catcher for the Orioles. Really like him. He's blocked right now, obviously, in Baltimore, but I think he has a chance to be really good. 226 likes in the live. Thank you guys so much, man. Trying to get to 230 likes. Thank you so much for the donations as well. It really helps support the stream. And if you do throw a little message into that donation, I'll make sure to answer it immediately no matter what I'm talking about. And I'll also shout you out by name because you support me. I want to support you too. So thank you so much. Let's get back to it. David Price, a little underrated. I would say David Price is frankly a little underrated. He had a borderline Hall of Fame career. No, solidly very good career. So I would say that he's that deserves a bit more talk than it gets. He did sign that big contract, and he wasn't the best for it, but I think he makes up for it based on the consistency he had earlier in his career. He was a big contributor to a couple really deep playoff runs, so I would say so. Catcher who couldn't throw, Rob Rojas. Now, listen, Rob Rojas could throw a little. Okay, and don't get too hard on my man Rod Barajas, okay? The pitchers in Pittsburgh couldn't freaking hold runners on too, okay? So that is large part their fault as well. He was a solid hitting catcher for a little bit in there. Overall, I'd say he's properly rated because, dude, who's talking about Rod Barajas except for in a Foolish Baseball video, am I right? So, yeah. About properly rated. Buster Posey. I'd say Buster Posey is about properly rated. Maybe slanting towards underrated because there are people having a debate that he should be in the Hall of Fame conversation. But, I mean, I do get it because he only played a couple, not that many seasons relative to some of the other guys. So, yeah, I would say that he's about properly rated in my opinion. Maybe a little underrated. We have Carroty Carrot. I love that name. $2 donation with Shohei is the GOAT. Listen, nobody's ever done what Shohei's done, and when you consider the fact that Major League Baseball has been at the game for 250 seasons, 250 years, 250 seasons, whatever you want to look at that is crazy, nuts, ridiculous, right? However, can I say he's the greatest of all time to ever play Major League Baseball right now? In that manner, yes. Overall, he's going to need to give me a few more seasons before I put him over Ruth, or if you're going to consider Royds, Bonds, or even some of those other guys too that like, you know, Mays, for example, right? Where it's like, would I rather have, for example, if you told me, like, if I was a GM, historic GM, and it's like, oh, you get 8 seasons of peak Shohei or 20 seasons of peak Willie Mays. I'd rather have Willie Mays. I know Shohei's, like, a lot cooler to some degree from the perspective of doing what he does, but, I mean, he needs to do it a bit longer, in my opinion. But I'd say he's properly rated because he deserves the shine that he gets. Alex Gordon is underrated, dude. Great callback to Alex Gordon, man. No one's going to talk about Alex Gordon going forward, but dude was an integral piece to a World Series championship with the Royals. He was good on a lot of Royals teams that weren't all that good as well. He was a top prospect, so some people were disappointed because he ended up being more of like a really good fielding left fielder who could like solidly hit versus like a great hitting left fielder, but I would say he's about properly rated. No, I'm sorry. He's definitely underrated. Sorry, I was looking at a different message. Ellie De La Cruz, overrated. Bro, Ellie De La Cruz is underrated, man. Just look what you're saying right now. He's overrated. How can a guy who's top 3 in NL WAR be considered overrated? As a 22-year-old. 1899 Cleveland Spiders? Dude, 1899 Cleveland Spiders are properly rated. Dude, they're looked at as one of the worst teams of all time, if not the worst team of all time. They are the worst team of all time. We're going to look at even the perspective of the politics. If you guys saw the video that came out today on the channel, they were actually, were intentionally trying to move the team to a different city. So they basically intentionally rigged the lineup a la Major League style to make the team worse. And it worked. Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt's properly rated, my man. Bobby Witt is literally amazing, and he's seen as one of the future faces of baseball. Like, basically Mike Trout at shortstop, and I would say he definitely lives up to that as of now. CC Sabathia, a little underrated. You know, I think a lot of people look at him as a Hall of Famer, but no one's going to put him prominently in the conversation. But doing what he did in the modern era of Major League Baseball, in my opinion, deserves a little bit more shine than he's probably going to get. Thank you guys so much, man. 231 likes. Let's try to get, well, dude, most errors. We're going to go off of errors as a good metric for defense. He's some of the most outs above average in Major League Baseball, which means a lot more. He gets to more ground balls. Anyway, 231 likes. Thank you guys so much for liking the live. Trying to get to 240 likes. Thank you so much for the support as well when it comes to the super chats. You guys have been amazingly supportive over the last few days. I really appreciate it. If you do want to guarantee that I'm going to see whatever your message is, you can throw whatever you want in there. A player, a take, whatever. I'll react to it. I'll also read off your name. You support me. I want to support you too. So thank you so much. Let's hop back into it. Justin Steele, dude, how's he been doing this year? I actually haven't checked his stats recently. So if you want to throw that in the chat, I'll react to it a little bit more. Last time I checked, I thought he was doing fairly well, but he was looked at as the future ace of the Cubs last year. So I would say probably properly rated, but maybe he's like balling out and I'm missing it. Okay, he's okay. Well then, yeah, I'd say he's about properly rated. Mr. Giraffe, Jesse Winker. I mean, last year Winker was terrible. This year he's been fairly okay. I'd say he's about properly rated. I mean, he seems like a guy who can, hit, but not really do much else, right? That's what he is. Ooh, Yomani Gallardo. Love talking about old guys like that. Guys, feel free. I can't stress it enough. Give me as old a player as you want or as young a player as you want. Like, I don't care. I'll review them all. But yeah, in terms of Yomani Gallardo, a little underrated, man. A little underrated. He had some good seasons for the Brewers. And then he also, dude, hitting-wise, he was one of the best hitting pitchers of all time. At least in terms of the modern era. Oh my God, we got somebody asking about Jack Caglione. Keep up the good stream. Thanks, man. Appreciate your support. Hopping in here, throwing in chats. Thank you. Jack Caglione is, I would say he's properly rated, man. He was seen as a top 5 draft pick coming into it. He ended up being a top 5 draft pick. I really, really want him to be able to pitch going forward, and they announced him as a two-way player, so he looks like he's going to be able to do that. I want him to be like Shohei light, even if he can't end up pitching it like in the same category, which doesn't look like he's going to be able to. I still would like him to get some significant innings on the mound, so I'd say he's about properly rated. Thank you so much for the support, everybody. Y'all are amazing. Trying to get to 240 likes. If you haven't liked so far, feel free to like. And then also, thank you so much for the super chats as well. Almost $40 in super chats. You guys are amazing. Feel free, if you do want to consider, you can throw whatever message you want in the super chat. I'll respond to it immediately. I'll also shout you out by name because if you support me, I want to support you too. So thank you so much. Yoenis Cespedes. Took you a long time to spell his name. Yeah, dude. I mean, it takes a second. I will say Yoenis Cespedes, I'd say maybe I say about properly rated because half his career was underrated, half his career was overrated. When he had that huge contract and he really wasn't on the field and he got hurt with the whole thing on his farm and all that, like he overrated. But earlier on in his career, people weren't talking about as much as they probably should have been just because he was on some lower level teams, and then he got passed around a lot as well. So I would say he's about properly rated in total. Dude, Henry Rowan Gardner, dude, one of the best rookies in Major League Baseball history. Are you kidding me? I'd say he's underrated. Shame with the reverse injury, huh? Could have had a Hall of Fame level career. Christopher Morel. Yeah, kind of sad the Cubs traded him. I get where you're coming from, especially for a guy who like is kind of a fly ball merchant down the left field line in Tropicana. So, but I will say I think he's about a little underrated. Morel, even like in how he was valued right there, he has 40 homer pop potentially, but he's been a terrible defensive player, terrible running the bases if I do remember correctly. So we'll see how he ends up shaking out. I'll say he's about a little underrated right now, a little bit. Russell Branyan, OMG, random player shout out. Russell Branyan, underrated. Bro never really got as much a chance as he deserved. If you look at his overall numbers, I think he averaged like 35, 36 homers per 162 games, but he never got the run he deserved. So Russell Branyan, underrated. Cutting the draft and robbing more players that need development. How do I feel about that? Yeah, it sucks. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of them like killing the draft. It shows when you sign a guy who's undrafted, there's almost no chance of him making the big leagues. Being drafted, period, is a huge thing for a lot of guys. So I don't like that they did that. I don't like the draft lottery. I don't like a lot of the stuff with the draft nowadays. I liked how it used to be maybe like 5 years ago. I thought that was like prime draft, Major League Baseball. Jackson Merrill. I think Jackson Merrill is slightly underrated. A lot of people are talking about, like, you know, it's clear that Paul Skeens is going to win the Rookie of the Year. And listen, he is definitely as of now. But, I mean, today he gave 4 runs, apparently. That happens a couple more times. And we could be talking about Jackson Merrill as the Rookie of the Year because of how clutch he's been recently. And also, he's been showing off some crazy pop. Aramis Ramirez is underrated, my man. Dude, people are not talking about Aramis Ramirez at this point. And Aramis Ramirez was one of the maybe top 5 best third basemen during his era. Yeah, you need to appreciate that. Has some great seasons in there. CJ Abrams is a little underrated. He plays for the Nationals, so like it's going to be tough for a team that's not that good as of now. So it's going to be a little tough. Thank you guys so much for all the support. Trying to get to 250 likes in the stream. We've been live for an hour and a half now. It's so great talking baseball with you guys, man. I could do this forever, man. This is amazing. If you guys do want to consider sending in a donation, it really helps support the stream. If you do throw a player in there, I'll answer it immediately because you support me. I want to support you too. And then I'll also shout you out by name. Thank you so much. Julio Rodriguez. I'd say Julio. I don't know. Julio. I'd say Julio Rodriguez right now is a little overrated based on the year he's had so far. I mean, it wasn't that good, right? And then he got hurt at the plate specifically. But if he can get back to what he was doing, even last year, I know last year was a down year, relatively speaking, to his first year. If he can get back to even last year, I'd say he's about properly rated. He only has to do that. And if he did that for like a solid 10 years, he's in the Hall of Fame conversation. But this year, he was a lot worse than people thought he was going to be, which means he has to be considered a little overrated. Thank you so much. Mike Trout. Mike Trout's probably properly rated at this point, right? People are looking at him as almost like a what-if case. And until he starts being healthy for long periods of time, it's gonna be tough. He's not gonna be able to be seen as underrated again. So I want to see him get underrated again. I want to see him actually be able to stay healthy for a while. Little drink there. Now we're back at it. Joe Mauer. I'd say Joe Mauer is about properly rated. I mean, he made the Hall of Fame, right? That has to be considered, like, making it, right? That has to be considered being, having that stature to make the Hall of Fame on your first ballot when you don't even have 200 career home runs. So I'd say he's about properly rated. He's getting that shine now. Imanaga, Rookie of the Year. I mean, he's playing in the same league with Skeens, and then with Churio, and then with Merrill. Probably not, but he's still been really good. I'd say he's still a little underrated regardless. Ben Sheets, a little underrated, my man. He had a couple years, and he had like 200-plus strikeouts, I think, back-to-back years. No one's going to talk about him now. So by that logic, I think he has to be considered a little underrated. Mighty Pat with the defensive ineptitude GOAT, Adam Dunn. Adam Dunn's underrated. I get the defense was terrible. I know. But bro had over 400 career bombs. He had over 40 homers like 4 years in a row. The war. I get it. But 400 bombs at the big league level, that has to be considered for something. And he's not going to be remembered as much as he should be because of that defense. So, yeah, I think that he's a little underrated. Will Holiday have a sophomore slump? Well, I mean, according to some people, he already had a rookie slump, right? So, I'm not counting on him to have a bad year next year. I think totally see him having a Gunnar Henderson type of, like, last season, next season. I think he has that skill set. I think he has that, like, maturity at the plate. Look at his OBP. If you guys haven't, go look at his OBP at AAA. Dude's a solid major league hitter. He deserves to be seen as such. 246 likes. Let's try to get to 250 likes. Anybody in here who hasn't liked so far, feel free to. Thank you so much for the support. Also, if you do want to consider throwing in a super chat, really helps support the stream. Throw in any message you want. I'll react to it immediately because you're supporting me. I want to support you too. And then also feel free to subscribe. Thank you so much. I'll shout you out by name as well if you do throw a super chat because, again, I want to support you. All right, let's what we got here. Francisco Lindor. I'd say Francisco Lindor is a little underrated. Just because look what he got, like, he got shafted out of an all-star spot this year. However, we're starting to a place where everybody's talking about him being underrated because he got shafted. So because of that, yeah, I'd say he's a little underrated. Tobias Myers, dude? Yes, totally underrated this year, dude. He's been amazing. But not a lot of people are talking about him in the rookie class. Tobias Myers, shout out him. He's amazing. Underrated as hell. Increase in velocity increases arm injuries. Do I think that's true? I would say so, but I don't think it's that simple. I think it's not only that, but I think it's also the conditions. Players are moving around a lot more than they used to have to. They're traveling a lot more, so that's going to be harder on your recovery. I also think that training methods have gotten harsher and harsher on the body, even if it's not directly correlated with velocity, even if we're talking about things like spin management, stuff of that nature. And then on top of it, just the standards of Major League Baseball are so much higher that I think that can really attribute to even like guys getting nervous and kind of anxious and maybe training a bit more than they should. So yes, rising velocity is definitely part of it. Is it all of it? No. But there's definitely a correlation. There's got to be. Throwing harder means you're throwing harder. Like, yeah, that is what it is. Julio Rodriguez. I'd say Julio Rodriguez is a little overrated as of now just because, you know, of his season he was having this year. Definitely his offense was not at the level that we thought it was going to be. Ultimate Gamer 2015. Thank you so much for the donation, man. We have Anthony Santander and Bartolo Colon. So, Anthony Santander, I'd say he's a little underrated. Dude has 35 bombs this year. He can definitely get to 40. That's amazing. He's not one of the faces of the Orioles outside of Baltimore. Oh, I got a donation and I missed it? What did I miss? Ultimate Gamer. I don't see a donation that I missed. I don't see it in the amount either. I did shout out Ultimate Gamer. If you guys do want to shout out who I missed, if I did miss anybody, feel free to. But Ultimate Gamer, anyway, back to you. Yeah, I would say that he's a little underrated overall. Like, on track for 40 homers. Yeah, 100%, man. And then you had another one in there, right? I want to make sure I get that. Anybody who throws a donation, man, you deserve to have the whole thing acknowledged. Bartolo's a little overrated. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, like, you know, he was more like an average pitcher for like 20-some years. And then he ended up getting seen as like an icon because of like his overall memeness, but he wasn't that great. So I would say he's about properly rated. I'm sorry, a little overrated. A little overrated. Thank you so much for your support, man. Almost $40 donations. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. It's the best way you can to support the stream if you have the means. I really do appreciate it. A 99-cent donation. Thank you so much from Julian. Oh, and you didn't even throw a message in there. Thank you so much, Julian. You can, if you feel free to. If you do want to throw a message in there, I'll answer it immediately. I'll also shout you out by name because you deserve to be supporting my stream, man. Y'all are amazing. Thank you so much. We got next here. Prime Mickey Mantle or Prime Ken Griffey Jr.? Who's better? I'll answer that one, sure. I would say probably Prime Ken Griffey Jr. was a little bit better than a Prime Mickey Mantle. Mantle was not... Well, he's probably a bit... Prime Mantle was more dominant relative to his era. I'd give it to Mantle there. It's really tough, though. Really close. We have Content, $2. Thank you so much, man. Nomar Garcia-Parra. Thank you so much for the support. I would say Nomar Garcia-Parra is a little underrated as of now. I mean, we talk about some of the great players of the late 90s. He might come up, but other than that, you're not really going to talk about him. And he literally has, like, his full career was really impressive as well. So definitely a little underrated. Thank you so much for the donation, man. Really appreciate all you guys, man. Thank you so much. Right, 250 likes. Wow. Thank you so much. We got next here. Please do Riley Green. I'd say Riley Green's a little underrated. He plays baseball in the Motor City, which means he's not in the hugest market. And then on top of that, too, Tigers have not been as good as they could have been. I think early in the year, I was really excited for them to potentially sneak into a playoff spot, but they've been slumping. So he's going to be a little underrated. I'd love to see him get to a place where he's more properly rated, I will say. Zach Greinke, underrated. Dude, we're still having a conversation about Zach Greinke's Hall of Fame case in 2024. I've seen multiple people talk about this. Dude is a Hall of Famer, full stop, man. Full stop. I don't care if he gets into 3,000 strikeouts or not. Dude deserves to be a Hall of Famer. One of the most consistent pitchers in baseball for 20-some years. Dude, come on now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. We're at 251 likes. Trying to get to 260 likes. Feel free, if you have the means, potentially to consider donating. Any donation amount as well. I mean, 99 cents, $2. I value them all equally. Thank you so much. You can throw a player in there. I'll answer it immediately no matter what I'm talking about. I'll also shout you out by name because if you support me, I want to support you too. Thank you so much. We get next. Jose Altuve, I'd say Jose Altuve, in the context of his career, is a little underrated because people aren't talking about him like the Hall of Famer he probably is because of the scandal, which I don't think he deserves a lot of the heat for. But as of right now, I'd say he's about properly rated. Wander Franco, the GOAT? I mean, dude. Wander Franco, 14% of the Hall of Fame vote. Eloy Jimenez, I'd say Eloy's probably a little overrated. I mean, dude, he's still got a little bit of that prospect stature like left on him, and he hasn't been performing up to that level the last few seasons. He needs to get up his overall production at the plate. I got one lull out of it. I'll take it. Matt McClain is underrated. Matt McClain is underrated. Dude, the year he had last year is crazy. I actually have a Cincinnati Reds franchise that I run in MLB The Show 24. Excited for the next one when it comes out. And he's one of the consistently great players, so. We got next here. Yachty. Dude, Yachty's amazing. Yachty's amazing. Yachty is probably about a little underrated. He's definitely a first ballot Hall of Famer in my opinion, and people aren't talking about him like he's a first ballot. But he's best defensive catcher of all time. If that's not a Hall of Famer, I don't know. Randy Johnson versus Nolan Ryan was my pick. Definitely Randy Johnson, man. Look at all the rate stats. Look at all the cumulative stats. The only thing that Ryan has on him is volume. That's it. So I would take Randy Johnson there. Brandon Nimmo's underrated, dude. Anybody who's Mets fan out there, Brandon Nimmo is underrated. One of the most underrated players in baseball to some degree. I mean, he's been consistently performing OBP-wise for like better part of half a decade, a little over half a decade. Plays good defense in center field, at least decent defense in center field. Great defense at either left or right. Solid base runner. Solid power, for sure. $2 donation. Thank you so much from Content. Second donation, man. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much. We got Rafael Devers. So, Devers. This is my opinion on him. Devers is one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball. I'd say top 20, top 30. But his defense at third base is so bad, he gives back some of that value. So, because of that, I'd say he also plays in a fairly decently sized market in Boston. I'd say he's about properly rated. He needs to move to first base or DH quick, man. That'll really help his value. 255 likes, guys. Let's try to get to 260. Thank you so much, everybody who's in here supporting. We've had consistently like over 150 people, 200 even at times, this whole stream. So I really love talking baseball with you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the donations as well. If you guys do want to consider donating, it's the best way to support the stream. You can throw a message in there as well. Regardless of whatever you put in there, I'll answer it immediately no matter what I'm talking about because you support me, I want to support you too. I'll also shout you out by name. Thank you so much. Vinny Pasquantino. I think Vinny Pasquantino is about properly rated, right? I mean, he's seen as like a slugging first baseman with some on-base percentage capabilities. I would say he's about properly rated. He hasn't been performing out of his mind this year or anything like that, so I can't really claim he's underrated right now. Trevor Bauer, I'd say Trevor Bauer, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, probably a little overrated just because people, I mean, he's been performing well in the Mexican League, don't get me wrong, I've seen the numbers, but when it comes down to it, because he's such a big social media presence, a lot of people are like, oh, he's the best pitcher ever, dude's a Cy Young winner, he's not in the big leagues, all that stuff. That Cy Young was a bit in the Mickey Mouse year, and then on top of that, when you look at his numbers before that season, he really only had 2021, and then 2018 his full seasons, and 2021 wasn't even a full season, but it was on track to be a full season, where he was really good, so because of that. Yeah, I'd say he's a little overrated. No hate to him though. I really like momentum and all that. So like, I love his like social media projects. It's amazing. So I'm not hating on it, but yeah. Yohan Moncada, a little overrated. It just when you have that prospect stature of that, like, you guys don't understand, man. And for those of you who were around back then, he was like the next MVP candidate, and he had a couple seasons that were pretty good. But since then, he's just been mediocre, and even this year, bordering on terrible. So like, yeah. We got another donation from Content. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your third donation today, man. You're amazing. Thank you so much. I think you might be the MVP of the stream so far. Thank you so much. Devers goes to DH. Will he be the next Big Poppy? that's hard to predict. Big Papi wasn't considered to be like on track to be Big Papi until we got to like maybe 2013, 2014 when he took back off because he had a little lull in there, relatively speaking, in the middle of his career. So that's tough to predict. I think Devers has that skill set because he's never been the most athletic guy, but he's very athletic in the box, specifically in terms of like being able to hit pitches that are way away from him, way in from him, all that stuff. So I think he has the skill set to age well, but he definitely should not be in the field. Sushi in the face, man. Thank you so much for popping back in. One of our members. Thank you so much. Jackson Holiday. I've talked about Holiday a couple times, but I'm glad to talk about him again for you. Jackson Holiday, I'd say, is probably a little underrated right now just because people were so down on him early this year because he started off so poorly. But he's starting to get his shine like he deserves, and a lot of talent evaluators are still really high on him. So I can't say he's decidedly underrated, but he's slightly underrated as of now. Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much for your membership. Really appreciate you. Thank you so much, everybody, for popping in here. I mean, at this for an hour and 40 minutes, almost an hour and 45 minutes, man. It was fun. Anthony Rizzo. I'd say Anthony Rizzo is a little overrated. I mean, look what he's done this season, relatively speaking. Oh, you popped in late, man. That's all good, Sushi. In your face. Oh, no, it's not an obvious question, man. Not an obvious question. I haven't seen that a ton. I just definitely did want to... I would love addressing him once in a while just because he's one of the big people someone's been asking, so a lot of people have been asking, so you don't feel bad, man. I appreciate your participation. I appreciate you popping in here. But yeah, anyway, Anthony Rizzo underperformed this year, underperformed last year. The concussion stuff's sad, but at the end of the day, it has to be a little overrated, right? Francisco Lindor. I would say Francisco Lindor is about a little underrated. I mean, think about it. Like, I mean, he didn't even make the All-Star team this year. But I say a little because a lot of baseball people are talking about that and have been talking about him for a while in terms of being underrated. So I would say he's a little underrated in my opinion. Cotent, another donation. Thank you so much, man. You've been amazing so far supporting this stream. I appreciate it. Jackson Holiday. I'm glad to talk about Jackson again. Jackson Holiday is a little underrated in my opinion just because a lot of people were really down on him earlier in the season based on his like really poor start, but he's been amazing lately. And anybody who has a prospect pedigree like that, you can't really say they're decidedly underrated, but he's definitely slightly underrated just because, you know, people wrote him off a little bit, so. The general baseball community anyway. Joey Bart, I think Joey Bart's probably about properly rated. I mean, I'd love to see him be more consistent year to year. I think he has a good chance to be a good hitting catcher, but he's never been able to put it all together. So I'd say he's about properly rated. We have another donation. Thank you so much to Samuel Paredes. I remember you from yesterday, man. Thank you so much for the support. Vladdy. I would say Vladdy is about, oh my God, we have a new member. We have a new member, Kurt. Welcome to MVP. Holy shit. Thank you so much, man. Dude, anytime you chat now, I'll make sure to answer yours like as if you threw in a donation because, man, it makes it greened out, makes it so easy to see. Thank you so much, man. But anyway, not ignoring the other donation with Vladdy. Thank you guys so much for the support. Vladdy is a little underrated. A couple years ago, or a couple years in a row there, he was a little overrated because people were talking about him like he was literally like you know, one of the faces of baseball, but he's throwing up 2-3 WAR. But this year, he's been amazing. He's basically been almost as good as he was in 2021. And people aren't talking about it because he's on a really terrible Blue Jays team. He's getting a little more shine now because of the hitting streak, but not as much as he probably deserves overall. So I'd say he's a little underrated. Thank you so much for the donation. Thank you so much for the membership, Kurt. Thank you guys so much, man. 260 likes, trying to get to 270. We'll stream it for a little bit longer here, and then I'll probably hop off to like 9 o'clock here. So everybody who's in here real late, thank you for spending that time with me. If you do want to consider donating, best way to support the stream, I'll shout you out by name immediately, and I'll also answer your take, no matter what you put in there. You can throw a player, throw multiple players, player from any era. You can throw in whatever questions, takes, whatever you want. I'll respond to it immediately because you support me, I want to support you. We have a message from Kurt. MTC is the GOAT. Thank you so much for the compliment, man. Thank you for the videos. Thank you for your support. We have, what do I think about Hunter Green? I think Hunter Green's a little underrated this year. Look what he's done so far. People have written him off a little bit because year to year he was inconsistent, right? I mean, you have one start with 14 Ks, the next one he gave up 7 runs and walked 6 or whatever. So this year he's a little underrated. I mean, he's been consistently good all season, really hot as of lately. So in way better shape too. Last year he was a little bit on the bigger side for what his frame was. So Yeah, I would say that he's probably underrated. Someone asked what my favorite MLB game I've ever seen in person. Bro, I was at the Yankee game where Shohei hit the game-tying homer last year. That was something. That was crazy. So yeah, I would say that was probably my favorite one I've been to so far. Mason Miller. What do I think of Mason Miller? Thank you, Kurt, again for the membership. I'll answer yours as of now. Mason Miller. I'd say Mason Miller's probably about properly rated. For a team like the Oakland A's, it's easy to be underrated, but he's been getting so much shine on all the socials because he throws so hard that he has to be considered about properly rated, in my opinion. He was seen as one of the big pieces to be dangled. He didn't end up getting traded because of his injury, more than likely. So, but I would say he's probably about properly rated, bordering on underrated a bit. Thank you so much again for your participation, guys. Ooh, I gotta take a break. I'm gonna take a little sip of my drink, man. I was talking at me parched. Bryce Durang is underrated, hands down. Bro's having one of the great rookie seasons from a second baseman we've seen in a while. So he's awesome. Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan as a baseball player, dude was a little overrated, just inevitably because he made it over to the minor leagues, and he probably shouldn't have been. Anybody else wouldn't have been. As a basketball player, he seems like he's properly rated. I mean, he seems like a legend. I don't know much about basketball, but he seems great. Ryan Mountcastle. I'd say Ryan Mountcastle's about properly rated, maybe a little overrated, bordering on, because he had a couple good power seasons, but as of recently, he's like OPSing around like 730 to 750, if I'm not mistaken. That's not that good from a first baseman, so maybe slightly overrated, bordering on properly rated. Byron Buxton's a little overrated. He just has to be until he can stay healthy and put up the production we know he's capable of. I don't know if it's ever going to happen at this point, but unfortunately. But I'd say he has to be a little overrated just because we're still talking about how talented he is, but he just can't stay healthy. Thank you guys so much. I think that's going to do it for me. It's an hour and 40 minutes? Yeah, hour and 40 minutes. Holy moly. Kikuchi, you know what? Sushi in your face, member? I'll answer you right now. I think Kikuchi's probably about properly rated. He's seen as a wild guy with some great stuff, which is about what I'd say he is as of now. Thank you guys so much for participation on the stream, man. We had some of the most viewers we've ever had. Obviously, you guys were very generous with donations yet again. Got a couple new members. Really appreciate all you guys. If you want to consider becoming a member, it blots out your name so I can see a lot easier. So any text you put going forward, I'll see it, I'll answer it. It's like $3. I got other packages, so. But regardless, thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. You guys have been amazing. I have Doc Gooden. I'll answer that last one. Doc Gooden was probably, I'd say, slightly underrated. Had one of the best peaks, and then was solid after that, but he ended up falling off a little bit because of the drugs and the surgeries and all that. But I'd say he's a little underrated. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your night. Really appreciate all you guys supporting. Really appreciate all you guys coming in. I'm going to do probably another stream tomorrow. So, yeah. If you guys want to come by for that one, it'll be on the earlier side. So, thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much, Sushi in your face. Appreciate all you guys. Thank you. Have a great one.